Someone said that Charlie Kirk is taller than Vaush. Is Charlie Kirk literally 6'4"? Or is that a meme? Is that just a joke? Is that a hilarious ploy? Because someone said that Charlie Kirk is like 6'4". Because if he's actually 6'4" and his face is that small, his proportions are like that's like wild shit. I'm not sure if Charlie Kirk is the type of guy where he's like 5'8" and he says he's 6'4". You know what I mean? You agree in this scenario, Vaush good? I like Vaush. I like Vaush. I think he's cool. He's a nice person. The thing is, you know, we've been talking a little bit about Destiny in the last couple of days, and the thing is, I was thinking about it. Oh my gosh.
Theory, the biggest threat to America, or is it at least a threat to America? Well, there's a lot of questions around that. Obviously, you guys know my position on this to a certain degree, but there's a lot of other issues we need to talk about. One of the biggest stories right now is that New York has imposed we'll call it I don't want to say limited, but it's a vaccine mandate for indoor activities, entertainment performances, and Bill de Blasio said the goal here is to encourage people, mostly young people, to get the vaccine. That means if you want to go to the movie theaters, if you want to engage in normal activities like at bars, you have to have a vaccine passport. You have to have proof. They call it Key to NYC. Now, why do I bring up critical race theory? Well, for one, you know the title of this video, we're going to have conversation, a political debate or discussion about this. But there is a question some people have brought up due to the low level of vaccination among the black community and how that will disproportionately affect people and whether or not theory. Well, for one, you know the title of this video, we're going to have conversation, a political debate or discussion about this. But there is a question some people have brought up due to the low level of vaccination among the black community and how that will disproportionately affect people and whether or not this will be truly equitable. But today, the bigger thing we're doing is not just about the news. It's about a conversation with two prominent individuals in politics. We've got Charlie Kirk, who I'm sure most of you know. Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
Charlie Kirk. Honored to be here. We're going to have some fun.
Do you describe yourself politically in any way? Like,
I guess you could say I'm on the right.
Conservative?
Yeah, more than that. And conservative and love of the country.
Right on. Then, of course, we have Vaush. Join it.
Howdy. Yeah. I'm
Whoa,
Vaush.
look at him.
I'm a YouTuber. And I guess I call myself a libertarian
Look at that
socialist.
jacket.
I like some parts of the country. I'm a big fan of some parts of it. Some other parts I think could use some improvement.
Right on. Now we've got Ian here, as per usual.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be in the chat today watching your super chats. So keep sending them in, and I'll be clipping them so that we can get to it at the end of the show. Hi.
And I am very excited. So I'm just going to interject here. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm going to be switching like a crazy person, and hopefully tonight goes really well. And we all.
Oh, this is the switcher.
New. And before we jump in, head over to timcast.com, become a member.
I don't care. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, we were like talking about Destiny for like the last couple of days. The thing is, I was thinking about it like all throughout my time streaming. I think I've been pretty decently fair to Destiny. I think I've been more fair than a lot of my community even thinks that I should be. To Destiny. I don't know. Like when I talk about my history, coming up into like becoming a streamer, I think I still even respect him as a political person. If I'm going to be honest. But you know, we don't, you're too fair. Yeah, I think a lot of them think that I'm too fair.
We talk about the vaccine.
Why don't we talk about what's going on with vaccine passports?
Sure.
We've seen in Sydney, for instance, they issued a lockdown. Enough people ignored it. They went out in the streets, and then this resulted in news articles saying chaos in Sydney. People aren't, they're not following the rules. The vaccination rate in Australia is ridiculously low. I think it's 18%, really, really low. Well, then they called in police, and there were big protests. Now they've actually deployed military. So I'm curious if either of you wants to jump in with your thoughts on mandates. What would happen if they came here, if you're for or against them?
Look, there are elements of mandates that I can agree with. We've already set standards for other things like the MMR vaccine, very basic standard vaccines that we expect everyone to get before they can go to school, travel. And I think for the most part that's worked. We've eradicated plagues from the world. I think we should be proud of that. With regards to COVID, since this is an ongoing pandemic, we need to focus on approaches that are effective and that don't ostracize or exacerbate tensions. With regard to the Australian situation, it's not something I'm extensively familiar with, but generally speaking, I don't think that cracking down on protests is going to be an effective way to incentivize people to get vaccinated. What's happening in New York might be, but my main issue with it is that I'm not entirely sure how they expect people to still have their vaccination card. I know that there's been some confusion from the beginning as to whether or not you should keep that. I know people have thrown theirs away. They made it too big for wallets. It just felt a little bit haphazardly planned from the forego. So that's unfortunate. Maybe they can find other ways to incentivize it, like, for example, in schools, where they have a direct access to government records, where they wouldn't have to use those little cards. That might be a little bit better. I guess we'll have to see.
Well, I'm not saying you believe this, but some people on the left, I never want to hear about the discussion of voter ID ever again. Because now you can force people to identify their medical history to try to get into a restaurant in New York City. Yeah, look, I'm not getting the vaccine, so I'm part of the 100 million people that are unvaccinated. And it's an experimental vaccine. The FDA and CDC has said that in January. It's questionably effective. Lindsey Graham just came down with COVID. You had a ship in the United Kingdom, 100% vaccinated ship that came down with COVID. It's more like a treatment than a vaccine. I'll leave that conversation to Dr. Brett Weinstein and the people that really understand
a treatment?
How that works. But yeah, this is medical apartheid. This is
he's just like a talking point machine. This guy actually has zero thoughts in his head. He's literally just a talking point machine. It's not a treatment. When people get COVID, like a ventilator is treatment. Things to get their oxygen levels up is treatment. Things to stop their lungs from filling with fluid, that's treatment. The vaccine is not treatment. It's a vaccine. It's a preventative measure. I'm sorry, not every vaccine is going to be 100% accurate. That'll never happen. We don't have a 100% vaccination effective vaccine. That just doesn't work.
This is trying to create a two-tiered system where if you don't make the proper medical decisions, you're not able to go to Broadway shows or go into restaurants, even when the Broadway efficacy of this vaccine is questionable at best. We see that in Israel, an 85% vaccinated country that's about to lock down again. And most of the new cases are from vaccinated patients, not unvaccinated patients in Israel. So, sorry, you want to interject him? But
yeah. Just in Israel? Wait, what vaccine? Wait, are they using Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna in Israel? Or does Israel have their own vaccine? Get griped? I've just been griped. But I'm not sure what's happening in Israel, but I know what's happening here, and most of the cases are happening on unvaccinated people. It's actually, you want to talk about medical apartheid. The real medical apartheid is lots of blue states doing very well when it comes to COVID deaths and hospitalizations, and red states doing demonstrably worse. They are absolutely, they are getting crushed. They are dying. It's actually extremely bad. And I feel bad for them because they've been lied to, and it sucks. Don't even gauge the talking point. Well, thankfully, I'm not debating him.
Obviously against mandates, and I think people should be able to make their own medical decisions. I think it's pretty obvious.
Well, I disagree. I think we actually have a story we wrote on timcast.com that our view of the lockdowns is that it's alarmism because a new study from the Public Health of England found the Pfizer vaccine is 96% effective after 2 doses at staving off the Delta variant, and AstraZeneca was 92%.
I can probably agree it's alarmism, but it's enough of an alarm for the public health leaders to undermine the argument that the vaccine is a solution to what would possibly satisfy the public. So, I mean, I was against the lockdowns in the first place. Let me be very clear when there was 1,000 deaths a day, not 334. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, a couple of points on this. First of all, it's experimental in the sense that there was an expedited process for its release, but there have been full and extensive studies taken on the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines. The reason why the FDA study hasn't been finished, the reason why it hasn't been fully vetted, isn't because they're looking for long-term health effects. It's because they're determining the extent to which it protects you over a long period of time. Ergo, the fact of the matter is, by all available data, this is undeniably much safer to get the vaccine. I mean, by orders of magnitude.
Let me ask you a question.
Well, wait, a couple things, because you said a few things there. There are some instances where areas have more people being infected if they're already vaccinated. But if you take a look at, this is like data mining. If you take a look at the broader statistics, especially here in America, the number of people who have gotten breakthrough cases is something like 0.003% of people who have been vaccinated. You can take a look at the numbers. Where is this new wave exploding? It's in the unvaccinated. In spite of the fact that fewer and fewer people are remaining unvaccinated, the vaccinated stay relatively healthy. And not only do they get infected way less often, they also suffer far fewer severe symptoms. Their hospitalization rates have plummeted, and their deaths are incredibly low compared to people who are unvaccinated. This is by all means an effective vaccine.
What's your opinion of Johnson & Johnson, the FDA saying that it might cause a rare nerve disease?
That's something that, first of all, when you take a look at that, you have to recognize that even if that was the case,
Which the FDA says it is.
Right. Well, they're looking into it, of course. It
No,
does seem-
they issued an official warning that it could issue a rare nerve disease. That's a big deal.
could issue, of course. They're looking into it, and that is something to look into. And
They issued a warning saying that it might do something. Listen, every vaccine, every medicine that you take, you could eat magnesium, you could get some salt, okay? You could get some you can eat a banana and that could like fuck your shit up. There are people who eat peanut butter and end up with a rare nerve disease. That just happens sometimes. We're all built different. It's going to affect your body differently all of the time. This is not a real argument. This is literally sometimes something can go bad with someone at some point in time. Sure, but the likelihood of you going into the hospital because you get COVID is way less than you developing a rare fucking nerve disease that turns you into static shock. And then you join like the Fantastic Four. All right, these two things are way different.
And to be concerned about.
What's your opinion of VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System?
Hold on.
First, I'm just curious because
Let's do the Guillain-Barré syndrome though. I think you want to.
Yeah. So of course, stuff like that can happen. Now, even if that claim is the case, it would remain the fact that unless the extent of that potential nerve damage is just apocalyptically severe, that the effects of getting COVID would still be far, far worse than the potential side effects of that vaccine. However, if you were to say, let's say worst case, Johnson & Johnson, it's not viable, that gets pulled, we see what the consequences are, that doesn't really speak against the greater viability of the vaccines. I got Pfizer, for example. We're talking hundreds of millions of people who have either been protected against the vaccine in part, or if they get it, against the virus, or if they get it, their effects, their symptoms are much, much, much more manageable.
So I just want to play into the irony here that I'm the one criticizing the pharmaceutical companies and you're the one defending. I just think I think it's delicious.
Hold on. That's an extremely dishonest talking point.
Well, you're peddling the Pfizer vaccine. You're saying it's so effective. So many people have taken it. Wait, I'm the one saying, hold on, maybe AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer.
Let's talk about the points he's made. And
no, I was just enjoying the irony.
The thing is, it's not really.
He even made a point. He's just trying to find some hypocrisy. Is that the only thing he knows how to do? He actually can't engage with anything he says. Vaush said something and he's like, what about this random thing? Like, okay.
Like irony if you understand the issue at hand. See, my praise doesn't go to the pharmaceutical companies or their CEOs. It goes to the tireless workers who spent months and months and months developing these vaccines.
Who's getting rich from this vaccine?
Well, hold on. Have I at any point praised the distribution or profiteering system?
Who do you think gets rich
Pfizer?
from vaccine mandates?
The
workers or the Pfizer CEO?
Nobody's talking about who gets rich. This is a toothless...
Isn't that your whole shtick?
This is a toothless critique that you could...
Let's try and go back and forth.
Is Charlie okay? Why the fuck is he molding so hard? Wait, did he realize that Vaush didn't take any of his bait and now he's left literally defenseless? He's just standing there and he's gonna get fucking clubbed the rest of this and he's already scared? Holy crap.
This is a toothless critique that you could apply to literally anything that you don't like. Everything in this country is manufactured to the profit of CEOs.
You don't mandate it, and so you can't go to restaurants if you don't get one of four major pharmaceutical medicines.
Wait, I just want to say, if that's your criticism...
That's one of many.
Then you should... So if that's the criticism you want to focus on, I'm in favor of nationalizing the pharmaceutical industry. I'm willing to take it that far. But whether or not that's on the table, and I can't just make that happen, when we're talking strictly about the effectiveness of the vaccine, it seems to be effective. That's not a praise of the capitalist industry behind it.
No, I was just enjoying the irony.
It's not irony.
Well, it's totally ironic, because I'm the one saying that they might be lying to us, and you're the one that's saying it's super effective.
Wait, what?
Which usually, if we were wearing our traditional uniforms, right versus left, it would be the other way around. That's all I'm saying.
The only comment I'm making is
what do you have to say about VAERS, though? What do you have to say about the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System that says, well, over 7,000 people experienced death after getting the vaccine? Does that worry you?
The VAERS system is entirely self-reported. I don't think it's generally used to form accurate metric.
Do you think it's underreported or overreported?
With VAERS, it's almost impossible to say. You know what VAERS is, right? Can you tell me what VAERS is?
Yeah, VAERS is a government website that physicians or individuals can submit complaints or concerns after an adverse event report from a vaccine. Since you cannot win in court against a vaccine production company, then they go through some process where the government then can distribute some form of remedy if you had an adverse event reaction. Right. That's what VAERS is.
And researchers like it because if you take a vaccine or you get some other procedure, any medical drug done, you can report the effects there, and it can be a way of gathering sort of aggregate data concerning the effects of these potential treatments. The problem is researchers don't use this as a bulletproof way of determining the outcome or effect of anything because they're literally just unvetted online submissions that anybody can put in.
So I
ask you because I want to know, how do you arrive at the conclusion that how many people did you say died?
it's VAERS' own data is 7,000 plus, and most of which, by the way,
that anyone can submit.
No,
I'm asking
by the way,
how you
most of
arrive-
which are physicians submitted. Just so you know, these
the
are
total number.
Most of the submissions on the VAERS website are done by like.
What do you mean most? This is like a really, like, I don't know what he's supposed to mean by most. Most of them, most could mean 50.01. That's what most could be. I don't know what you mean by like most. Most could be that. Most could be 70. Most could be 80, 90, even that. 10% not reported by physicians, some random person. Listen, if that's true, where you can just go on that website and just type in any random shit, I can promise you, if we go in there, there's going to be people with like pictures of themselves with spoons stuck to their forehead and be straight up like, so the vaccine gave me powers and I am now Mr. Magneto and I would like to sue. Okay.
Family doctors or local physicians. So I'm just asking, what number of adverse event reactions would you say maybe there's something wrong?
But I'm asking,
10,000 deaths?
How do you know these deaths were caused by vaccines?
No, I'm just saying that's what VAERS says, right?
No, wait, so I need to know this.
We don't. That's the question.
So wait, is these just people who have died after taking the vaccine? Like they may have died from some medical incident afterwards and it just gets put up there?
This is the question. Usually a vaccine gets pulled when you have 15 attributable deaths. We have 7,000 that we have to go through. The question is, when you call time out and say, maybe we should mandate it.
You're not answering the question. How do you know that they're from the vaccine?
We don't. That's the point.
Oh,
but you don't either. But the position is, let's mandate experimental medicine. We don't know actually what's happening.
If you don't know, then how can you say that medical doctors are the one uploading this information? Is there any methodology you're looking at?
We do know who's actually uploading it. We know that. We know the entries are usually and typically traditionally. How about menstrual cycle disruption, loss of nerve capacity, unable to walk, paralysis, miscarriages, mood changes? Also, you can go through the VAERS database like, oh, that's interesting.
You get all, you don't, what? These aren't like studies or anything. You don't know if this has anything to do with the vaccine. You have no clue. And all of those things happen when you get COVID, but worse.
Mood changes. What about the death?
Let me interject something.
7,000 plus. That's a serious.
How do they know it's from the vaccine? I keep asking you this. You don't.
Let me address 2 points, one from each of you, real quick, so we can try and. How do we know it's from the vaccine? It's a difficult question. I would say that if you have a mass vaccination program which gives out 330 million doses or so, and then people start saying, "Hey, I got the vaccine, then this happened." VAERS isn't here to say it is or isn't. They're here to say, can we find a pattern in this? And I think 7,000 suggests there may be one at the very least. I'm not a scientist, so I can't stress that. I will also say, however, to Charlie, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, it's a side effect.
I always mispronounce it.
Guillain-Barré.
Bar.
There you go.
Yeah, something like that.
My understanding is actually
disease?
a side effect of many vaccines.
Yeah, it is.
And so
totally, that's correct. It could be.
Well, so the issue I have is one of the things that Vaush brought up is that there's been, how many you mentioned, 100 million, 160 million? 115, I think it is, million.
Who have been fully vaccinated?
Fully vaccinated.
I think in that ballpark.
So of course, if you have something very different from any other vaccination we normally do, because we're not having everyone do it all at once.
Yeah, and so this is a mass inoculation thing. And so here's why the American system should answer this question easily. When you have any sort of uncertainty or disagreement, yield to rights. So yield to rights. Allow people to say no. Let me just build out the argument, right? So for me, for example, I'm 27. I don't consider COVID to be a largely disproportionate risk to my way of life. I don't know.
So just so you know, this is a really big conservative argument, and I want everyone to be privy to it when they use it. When they talk about COVID, they only talk about their self and their own personal well-being. They rarely ever talk about their risk of giving it to other people. When you get COVID, you have the opportunity to give it to like 3 to 5 other people, and that could spread to another 3 to 5 other people per person. That is a horrible statistic. And if you don't care about any of that and you just sit there and you're just like, yeah, I mean, I won't die of it, but you don't care about anybody else around you, for one, that's extremely cruel, and two, it's un-American.
About this vaccine, I have gotten other vaccines in my life, so I want to be able to have the right to say no to that. So the American system, Constitution, kind of like the tradition, is to be able to have people have nuance, preferences, and individualism when it comes to these sort of complex issues, not saying you can't go to a restaurant because we want you to take experimental medicine.
Right. So a couple of points on that. First of all, if we're speaking to legal rights, the Supreme Court found over a century ago that when it came to vaccinations, this was a special exemption from some people's rights to.
I will agree with you that the courts are not on my side.
1904 in that one. And there's a reason why. Because, of course, when you choose not to take the vaccine, you contribute to the removal of others' freedoms. See, it's true. You do have a freedom to not or to take a vaccine, but I think other people should have the freedom to not grow up in a world ridden by plague. And with the way this disease, COVID, mutates with time, as all diseases do, inevitably, if it continues to circle the world long enough, and this is an international problem, not just an American one, new strains will develop, which will slowly ebb at the effectiveness of this set of vaccines. So it threatens all of us. May I say one other thing?
Yeah,
sorry. With all of that being said, just to speak to VARS, VARS is an incredibly effective system for locating and roughly attributing concerns related to the effects of drugs. The problem is that there are several elements to this disease that make it really difficult to pinpoint anything specific. The two of which being A, hundreds of millions of people vaccinated. That's a huge range to pull data from. And B, the propagandist fear campaign about an incredibly effective vaccine process that may lead people to misattribute
I just want to get a quick
clarification
clarification
to vaccines.
Sorry.
But just quick clarification. Are you for mandating the COVID-19 vaccine?
The same way we have other vaccines, like school, travel, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, like, what if someone wanted to go to a restaurant or a supermarket or a movie theater?
I think that, we don't have that for other vaccines, right? Like, every time you go to a movie theater, you have a little card. I understand that might be an effective panic measure, but long term, my goal would be to integrate it into the same revenue of vaccines.
I think that's a more reasonable response than some politicians. I'm just going to be honest.
People are panicking.
No, I think that's a more,
yeah.
I just want to make sure we weren't having misunderstandings.
No, I think that's more of a reasonable answer. I just curious, just on the vaccine topic in general. Are you concerned by Dr. Malone coming out, who literally invented the mRNA vaccine and says that there's a dangerous spike protein involved, and he encourages people to think twice before getting it? Does that move you at all?
Well, you're free to speak with your doctor when it comes to
Dr. Malone, just his specific commentary. The guy who invented this type of vaccine.
Well, I'm not a PhD, and I doubt that he was directly involved in the production of these vaccines.
No, he literally invented this type of
mRNA,
vaccine.
but with the
that's it. He's so slippery. So this guy may have invented the original blueprint for the foundation of these vaccines, but these vaccines that were made by these companies. He has no clue what goes literally inside of all of these things. He didn't have his hand into the making of these things. It's weird.
Johnson, the Pfizer, the Moderna.
But he's very, very aware of the sort of accelerated implementation. He's trying to call time out and tell people this is not like any other vaccine. Does that worry you? His claim is that it involves a spike protein. It was rushed to market. It's going to have side effects. You don't understand it like I did. I invented this. And you got to think twice before mandating it or even taking it if you're under a certain age. Does that bother you?
What makes the current retinue of vaccines that we take, the mRNA process, different from other mRNA vaccines?
It doesn't involve the spike protein. According to him, the same composition as like the measles, mumps, rubella type vaccine or the chickenpox vaccine.
Well, those weren't mRNA. The process wasn't developed back during the MMR vaccine.
Totally, but some of them are getting updated for the more mRNA type technology, right?
If he wasn't involved in the production of these modern vaccines, how could he possibly have any comment on any of the rigors or tests that were done before?
Because he invented this type of vaccine. I'm just saying, does that bother you? Do you think he's just like a fear propagandist and like...
No, he may well have concerns, but those are concerns that I would rather have addressed by the scientific community rather than, with respect to you and myself, YouTubers.
Well, no, I agree. But the question is which scientists, right? So there's a lot of scientists speaking out against this. Dr. Brett Weinstein, Dr. Malone.
What is Dr. Brett Weinstein's
He's an evolutionary biologist, so he knows a little bit about how
that's not virology.
Cellular function works.
That is not virology. That is a completely spurious association.
Do you trust Fauci more or Dr. Brett Weinstein?
It's not about Fauci. It's about Fauci.
He's a virologist who's been wrong about everything.
It's about the global... Well, hold on. He's smiling with glee here. It's the global medical community in this regard.
You mean like the WHO? Like
no, I'm not. Hold on. Wait.
Put a name behind it.
He's very excited.
So just so you know, for once again, Charlie's going crazy right now. Listen, Charlie, it's okay. I have ADHD too. Did you forget to take your meds before the debate? It's okay. I get a little bouncy too. It happens. It happens to the best of us, bud. All right. You need to calm down. He needs to pull out his little fidget toy. Charlie's gonna Timple's gonna hand him a fidget spinner under the desk so he can start to spin it and calm down. So just so you know, I looked it up really quick. What he's talking about, this spike protein, basically what he's saying is that there's this protein that's in the COVID vaccine that this doctor says may be toxic to cells. The thing is, it's like the same thing that when like dude bro workout gym rats were like, oh yeah, there's phytoestrogen in tofu and soy, and that's how you got like soy boy. That's literally what he's doing. There is a spike protein in the vaccine, but it's not toxic to cells. It doesn't do the same thing as other spike proteins do in other parts of the world. So he's just lying.
No, I just want to say, it's not just about the WHO. We're talking about a unified effort on the part of virtually every country on Earth to get a hold of the vaccines that us Americans are privileged to have. This isn't some like pharmaceutical Dr. Fauci push that wasn't broadly supported by any of the relevant experts. In the mRNA field, which is not huge because it's a very new development, internationally, there is a demand for these vaccines.
I wanted to add, just based on what you had said, I can pull up Reuters. Their fact check is that vaccines are not, quote, cytotoxic. They go on to mention that Robert Malone, and they show the Brett Weinstein podcast, they show the Post, the FDA was alerted months ago that the spike protein in the COVID vaccines are cytotoxic, toxic to cells. The FDA did nothing. Reuters says this is not true. Now, the issue at hand is trust. Like you mentioned, you said, do you trust Fauci or Weinstein? I don't know if there is a fact-based argument if you have the doctors you trust and the doctors you trust or the organizations you trust. It's a clash of who you believe, to be honest.
None of us have the credentials to just come up with these arguments on their own. There will always be bias in who we choose to believe. However, given the plurality of people seem to support the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine, and the fact that it doesn't take a virologist to notice that over 500,000 Americans have died of COVID, more than the combined death tolls of every war since World War I combined, including the Second World War in Vietnam. Those are things that I don't need to be a virologist to see. I can see it
Can I ask you a question, though?
That's pretty bad.
One of the issues that's brought up frequently, especially on Twitter, is that many of these COVID deaths are died with COVID, as it's brought up, or people would say something like it tends to be people who are over 70 or things like that. I'm only bringing that up not to make the argument, but because you said, how would VAERS know if these are actually related to the vaccine?
I'd love to respond to that if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So COVID rarely, directly kills you. Like age, it causes a breakdown in other vital functions that then their death can be attributed to such. So, for example, of the many things that people die, it's not really COVID, it's just that COVID blanks their entire system internally, and eventually something fails, something breaks, and they die. There were people claiming that there were deaths being spuriously attributed to COVID-19 very early on in this pandemic, but thankfully we know that's not the case, because if you take a look at the excess mortality numbers, the number of people who should die every year in the United States, because there's a very normal pattern, normally with this many people in this country, we see an excess, starting when COVID started, that almost perfectly graphs on to the rising death waves of COVID. I mean, it perfectly tracks onto that.
I just want to say for you, Charlie, I think, the issue I see here is, for me, it's I can't trust or distrust. I don't know. I think Brett Weinstein's a very smart guy, and I don't think he's going to lie to me. And these doctors are very smart people. And then I see the government agencies that, I don't always trust the government, to be completely honest. I'm not a big fan. But to believe that there's like a nefarious effort or anything like that, ultimately what it comes down to is, in my opinion, having a trusted medical professional that you can consult with.
Well, I totally agree. And I think there could be an argument that if you're over the age of 70, that this vaccine might be a really good idea for you. However, to mandate it for schools and for colleges, when these are highly complex medical decisions, that's where I'm going to push back against it.
Well, let me
they are complex.
Listen, the 70-year-olds can get it, but the 15-year-olds who come home and then give it to grandma, they shouldn't have it. Okay, buddy.
Johnson & Johnson vaccine is not an mRNA vaccine, though. Is that's my understanding?
I don't want to speak out of turn.
I believe so. I would love to be fact checked on that.
I'm not totally sure.
My memory is
so
faulty.
I guess another question I have: what do you think of alternative type treatments? Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin.
UV light injected directly into your ass. Wait, is he going to go onto alternative medicine? Is he going to say that like cupping and sounding is going to cure your COVID? What the fuck? You should start eating some Tide Pods. And listen, I don't trust no dang Pfizer vaccine. Give me the Tide Pods. What do you talk alternative medicine? What, I should eat a bunch of like great giant fucking Asian hornets? I should drink some like Cobra infused vodka. Is that what's going to cure it? This is ridiculous. What's happening right now?
Why the push for mass inoculation?
Well, because hydroxychloroquine studies have found it largely ineffective. There was, I believe, a French study that stopped when people started dying of heart failure. I think the only reason the right dies on this hill is because Trump mentioned it. I don't think there'd be a push for it otherwise.
Also, later studies show that hydroxychloroquine actually, in some cases, can make your COVID worse. So.
The vaccines are the effective way at getting mass populations inoculated. And while it is true that most of the people who die are ancient, the fact remains that people experience long-term side effects from getting COVID, even if they survive. I know people who are in their 30s, and me, a blistering 27-year-old myself, I'm not especially worried, but I've heard them talk about how much harder it is for them to climb up flights of stairs. I know that erectile dysfunction, fellas, is one of the listed potential side effects of getting COVID. Even young, healthy, no other problems. It is true that death is most comorbid with age and pre-existing conditions, but still, and that's not even to speak of the COVID variants.
Honestly, honestly, Charlie's right. Dr. Fauci completely failed on COVID. He completely dropped the ball. If Dr. Fauci would have come out to say that if you get COVID, your dick's gonna fall off. All right, you won't be able to fuck. Your dick's gonna fucking fall off. We'd be at 99% vaccination right now. Yet they didn't. How sad.
I mean, right now we're on Delta, but if it keeps cycling around the world, let it go for another year. Who knows how bad this could get?
So Johnson & Johnson is not an mRNA vaccine. So there's an alternative to mRNA if you're concerned about it.
And there was some guidance with the nerve disease with that. Sorry to interrupt.
I do think we kind of overlooked something really interesting is that when did we mandate vaccinations in public schools?
Well, I know the Supreme Court case concerning this was in 1904, so I would know it would have to have been earlier than that. I know that Washington even had his troops vaccinated, though I forget.
For smallpox.
Yeah. Smallpox, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy to think
Inoculated, not Yeah, you're right.
Well, I don't know what they did, hit people with a rock and then
it was
pour
like
liquid
like a needle, I think.
It was,
and they would prick you with the needle that had like a weakened sample or something.
And they would have had to forge that needle,
with
a blacksmith. Isn't that crazy to think about? Like Washington's
I know, like someone pouring it and then today it's just a machine that makes it.
It's just wild to think about.
Well, so
be careful,
man. I think the real issue for the most part is just mandatory.
Well, I just also have another question. Do you think that there might be any bad motives behind these four companies, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson, considering they are big pharma and they pursue profits, which generally, as a libertarian socialist, you're skeptical of? Do you think maybe they might have nefarious motives?
Oh, their intentions are reprehensible. They have for many years made money off the backs of American deaths. The opioid crisis is almost entirely attributable to the malfeasance.
And the Sackler family.
Yeah, I mean, no moral love for these companies. If this could be, and by the way, the mRNA process was developed through public funding. It was, an effort invested in by the collective good, something I'm generally supportive of. When it comes to these companies themselves, and when I say, go get your Pfizer vaccine, whatever, please do not mistake this or anything else that I say for an endorsement of the practices of these companies. It is only through cruel twist of fate and the economic system we live in that they are the ones put in a position to handle this. But it was the work.
Yeah, dude, go get your Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca vaccine. Do not get their travel mug. Do not buy their branded mask. Do not go buy a Pfizer teddy bear. Don't go just throwing money at them. They're not good people.
Workers at those companies, not the CEOs who did the work.
I'm just curious, does that ever make you stop short and say, maybe they're trying to massively inoculate us on a vaccine that might not be as effective to try to pursue profit, not well-being? Does that ever enter into your calculation?
It's a consideration you should take about anything produced by any company that's run for profit, which is everything. Basically every need in American society is tempered by the knowledge that there are people out there who are paid very large salaries to sell it to you. This is the case for everything we do, everything we eat. Every time you run down Main Street, or in my case, I guess, the boulevards in Los Angeles, you're seeing the protracted efforts of $1 billion industry to make sure you want things they're selling. Could that be the case for COVID? Undeniably, there was a profit incentive involved. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Gosh.
And there was probably a protracted effort on the part of these companies to make sure they were the first, and they probably took every dirty advantage they could get. With the data available, I have to still, much as I would say, hey, I would prefer eating McDonald's food to starvation, I have to say this is probably still something we should be doing.
You want to do? I
don't get a Moderna dildo. Yeah, I mean, after they give you the shot, you're supposed to throw that thing away, right? After they give you the vaccine juice, you're supposed to throw that thing away. You're not supposed to keep it.
I want to stay. It's been 20 minutes.
No, for sure.
Do you want to make a final point?
Maybe you would starve instead.
I actually think this has been really constructive and not like that, inflammatory. I think that deep down you have this kind of, urge that I'm already there, where maybe they want this thing to go on for another decade to go make another $100 billion. And maybe the cheap drug of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin might work better than they might think.
I don't have that urge.
Other studies would disagree with you earlier. We could change the topic. I just think it's...
So
that was a healthy discourse.
Can I meet in the middle on that one, on that very last one?
Yeah.
I do not trust the pharmaceutical industries, though the available evidence does seem to point to the effectiveness of the vaccines. I say this, nationalize the pharma industry. Seriously. It could be used for the collective good, and I would unironically actually trust it more in the hands of our ineffective, bloated government than I would the sociopaths who run it currently. And
so I'll wrap this up by saying, always talk to your doctor. That this is one of the biggest things. Like YouTube is very strict on this, especially. But I genuinely think this is the right answer. If you're watching this, don't assume anyone here is right or wrong. I mean, I'm sure there are people who think Charlie's made a bunch of good points, and you have. Ultimately, it's down between you and your doctor. And I'll stress, for whatever your opinion, Charlie, I understand. Hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin haven't been approved by the FDA. And
you know what's really great? We shit on YouTube all the time, and they deserve to get shitted on. But YouTube, after the end, in the beginning of 2020, they started to make some really great moves, and they've done really good when it comes to their TOS, to crack down a lot of like COVID misinformation. And so not only did it like sweep people, like not only did a lot of their changes to the TOS sweep people up, like the rest of the fucking debris that was left after they clapped the cheeks of Nick Fuentes. They also cleaned up Stefan Molyneux, and now Tim Pool is even scared to lose his channel. That's a really great thing. Crowder, he's scared to lose his channel. He has to like pull back on all of this stuff. It does work at the end of the day. The fear of being deplatformed does work.
So that's just another.
We're just asking questions whether it works or not.
So that's why I think it's really important, because I think there are. I got to be honest. In regards to ivermectin, people have been eating horse paste that they sell. I looked up what the FDA says about it. They say do not do this, and they actually give a very good reason. They say, although people are claiming that if an animal can take it, someone else can. That's not true. There's some things that dogs can't have that humans can. Right. So please talk to your doctor. And I definitely hope we can continue having debates about this stuff, because that was vastly important. I'm really glad you guys were able to have that conversation.
I hadn't even heard of the horse paste thing. That's
yes.
horrifying.
Ivermectin is technically
wait, Vaush heard a horse and his ears perked up.
drug for horses. It's off-label use.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a dewormer. And so you can go to like Tractor Supply, and they have a sign that says like, do not eat this, and please.
Any drug for horses will burn a human out from the inside. Those
like
things you've been near, they're titans. They're like,
So let's talk about the other big topic, critical race theory. That's the one that I had a terrible answer, absolutely, when you asked me about it. And it was because I think my approach to it was too surface level cultural. So the last time we had Vaush on, when you asked me about it, I couldn't give you a good answer. And I think we can talk about what's happening in schools, the things they're teaching children, and I don't know if either of you has an opinion and wants to start off with.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, so there are two CRTs. There's the critical race theory that I know of, which is a highly esoteric, essentially elective class that you can take in some law schools that teaches you a variety of incredibly eclectic legal theories some of which I like and some of which I think I disagree with. And then there's the critical race theory that people like Christopher Rufo have been trying to push, a sort of catch-all term to describe all anti-racism. We see these anti-CRT bills being put through straight legislators, and a lot of them don't even mention critical race theory. They mention stuff that's been boilerplate anti-racist theory for like 2 centuries. That stuff really concerns me. If I think that academia is to an extent sacred, of course, all the good things in our society now were born in the halls of academia. The Enlightenment, our democracy, the fair trial that we enjoy if we're arrested, these were things that were originally considered to be the crackpot initiatives of academics, and only through the respect of those ideas have we arrived at what we have today. So if there are problems within academia, I would have them solved in academia, not through the big hand of government reaching in and censoring everyone who says something that disagrees with some
cancel culture.
So a point of clarification, you don't believe that critical race theory is in schools?
I think that maybe there are ideas which overlap with critical race theory, but there's always going to be overlap between academic ideas. I mean, I drank water, so did Hitler, one of those type situations.
I think you're coming at it from in good faith, where you're technically correct here that the super academic way of defining critical race theory is not being taught to 4th graders, right? With that being
so. It'd be pretty
with
tough
that being said, there are it's almost like saying, we're not teaching advanced geometry to 4th graders, but we are teaching them, very basic math, right?
We're sure, but those are like 2 incredibly different things. One plus Oh no, I was about to blank. Okay, listen, I was about to pull a phase blanks. 1 + 1 = 2 is not geometry. 2x times 3 equals something. All right, that's not that's not string theory. These two things are like incredibly 1 + 1 = CRT. That's true. What is this pause? Shush, quiet, silence. You leave me alone.
Get them the Euclidean geometry. So the very basics of this are definitely in schools. And there's many examples.
Husband's a Tim Pool fan now.
The National Education Association literally came out in their press release and said that they are going to push for, and their word was critical race theory, just so we're clear. They use that term, right? That's not Christopher Rufo, that's not James Lindsay, who are good friends of mine. That's the National Education Association, right? And I think they might even be talking about something different than the Delgado theory of critical race theory, right? And so what I want to try to do here, Tim, is we can talk about critical race theory as an academic theory, or we could use a filler term like wokeism, which is more like racial.
Please, fuck. I hate that word. I can't believe they actually turned that into a word. Wokeism. We hold wokeism. What the fuck? We could listen, these terms that go over people's heads. I'm tired of the academics. Let's talk about words that really mean something. Wokeism. Okay, buddy. Sure, I guess. It's really hard to define critical race theory because everybody has like all the academics have their own thing that they mean and they describe when it comes to critical race theory. So it's hard to like typically pin down on just one thing, but what a lot of conservatives want to do, they want to find the person who says the most inflammatory shit, and then say that this is what all critical race theory is, and then throw all of it out, because then they can take that, stick it to literally every anti-racism thing, pick it up, and then throw it in the trash, because that's their ultimate plan.
Justice, which I actually think would probably be, we can call it racial justice and meet in the middle. Right?
I really feel like there are probably 4-digit number of people in America who are studied on actual critical race theory, not including myself.
And I'm not even prepared to do that. But I'm happy to talk about racial justice education and wokeism, which I think
is what the discourse is centered on.
Well, I think you guys actually agree in essence that the academic critical race theory there's overlap with a component in schools, but what we often hear is someone will say critical race theory is being taught to my kids, and then someone will say cite one author of critical race theory that we've brought up in school. And the issue is we refer to it as I believe it's called critical race praxis. Mm-hmm. So this is something different than critical race theory. It's being implemented in education, but that's why you said wokeism. And
I just think that discussion is so unhelpful when Joy Reid and Christopher Rufo are screaming at each other. And Joy Reid is saying, like, it's not being taught anywhere, Christopher Rufo, so yes, it is. When in reality, they're both right. They're just talking about two completely different things. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
No, I do. And Christopher Rufo has admitted this is like a kind of tactic. Critical race theory does sound spooky. I get a little...
Yeah, it's not good to quote Christopher. Him bringing up Christopher Rufo is actually that's a great misplay. Because that guy literally admitted that the only reason he's doing this to bring up critical race theory is to connect it to things like MLK and the civil rights movement and anti-blackism, anti-black like thought and ideology in America. He just wants to crush all of that. That's the whole reason he brings this up, and that's why he got his like cheeks grinded by Joy Reid in that one debate. But like, whoo, baby, that's bad.
Shiver when I say it. Whereas stuff like anti-racist theory or structural racism maybe compel a little bit more thought when discussed on. It's kind of a moral panic that in principle I really disagree with. But if you want to talk, I mean, we can call it wokeism if you want. That's probably a more accurate term.
Yeah, I will just say to the point about Christopher Rufo, white supremacist is also used as a catch-all term in the other direction.
If we're talking, I mean, in academia, the term white supremacist is virtually never used. It's sort of a common parlance.
What I will say, though, to give credit to Christopher Rufo, is that this is all kind of downstream from the conversation that Marcuse and Delgado started. Yeah, well, it really is.
Well, let's talk about it then. But just one thing, though, since we're operating under the blanket wokeism, which is a really broad term, let's talk about, like, specific ideas, because I'm sure there are some of them that I can provide a good defense for, and some of them
how about like
disagree with.
Black-only dormitories?
Generally not a fan. I think that I don't think they're like explicitly harmful in the same way that traditional segregation is, but I also think that it incentivizes bad types of socialization, where the way that you get a reprieve from the faults of society is to find comfort in people of your own race. Maybe that incentivizes some bad stuff. In my university, we had safe spaces, but you know what they were? They were like chilled, like coffee break rooms behind like
Where'd you go?
Latin. I went to Humboldt State.
Okay.
And right behind there, and like anyone could go in there, whatever. Just the only thing that they asked was that you not be like a dick. But as long as you met that qualification, that was fine. That to me, that's a good safe space. Maybe that works, you know?
I remember this when I went to college. I was in, man, I remember this clear as day. Holy crap. So we were in orientation, and I noticed, and there weren't like a crazy amount of black people there. It wasn't like there was none, but there wasn't like, the craziest amount. For someone who went to private school a lot, and for someone who like lives here in Kentucky, and went to schools, we've had like I've been like in places that have been predominantly white like my entire life. When I walk into a room that's completely full of white people, I'm like, oh yes, feels like home. So it was like, I was fine, but then I noticed there was this one guy, and he was in like he was in a suit. The suit was like a little bit baggy on him, but it was like a tan suit, and he was just kind of like shuffling through the crowd a little bit. We were all in like rows and stuff, and we were in we were in the chairs, and there was like aisles on the side, and he was kind of like, he was just prowling, I think is how I would describe it. And he was black, and so I see him just like making his way towards me, and I just like, don't make any eye contact, I don't know what's going on. And then he like made his way to me, and then was like standing like next to me because I was on the end of the aisle, and then he was like prowling. He was hunting. Okay, so I'm sorry if you don't like the term. He was hunting. Anyways, so he was there. He was clapping. He was doing everything with the whole like presentation. And then like some time, like probably like 2-3 minutes later, he turns to me. He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, it's fine. I'm doing great. It's cool. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I noticed you're black." And we want to make sure that this place is incredibly inclusive to people like you, like me. So here's this card, and he handed me this card, and he is the like black representative faculty member, head of that like department, and he propositioned to me to go into like the all black dorm, and I gotta say, I was fucking terrified. I don't want to be in the all black dorm. I'm sorry. Like I don't have anything wrong with black people. They're fine. They're great. My family's black. My mom is black. Great people. All I gotta say is, usually down here, I just do not connect with them a lot of the times. I just do not connect with them, and I just don't. It's just I can't imagine being like an all black dorm. I don't want to be in a place that's like all one race. That makes me really uncomfortable. The thing is, when I say like all white room, like sure, like I was joking, like, oh yeah, it feels like home, but like at least there were like some black people there. A place with like only black people. My parents took me down to Georgia in a neighborhood that's like it's like 90% black, and I was like, what is this place? I'm like, what's happening? I'm like, dude, I'm like, holy shit. There was like the dude, he had like basketball shorts and no shirt, and he was on like one of those Walmart BMX bikes. I'm like, holy shit, this is like a fucking Kendrick Lamar music video. What's happening out here? And they took us to a chicken joint. I'm like, holy, this place is wild. And I just wanted to go home. But I personally, I also don't think that it's like great. I think it's good to be around different sorts of people.
So just happy to go through more.
Go for it, please. No, hit me.
I think this is actually really helpful. So how about reparations for slavery?
I think I'm pretty in favor of that, yeah.
Okay, make the argument.
It's just an owed debt. We said 40 acres and a mule. We never paid it. And unfortunately, the material reality for a lot of people who were slaves didn't change that much after they were emancipated. I mean, if you were a slave and you're made free, that's a big step up, don't get me wrong, but you have nothing. I mean, nothing. And because of the way generational wealth transfers from father to son or mother to anyone, to their children. Caught me there. Unfortunately, we still see the consequences of that borne out. You can actually look county by county. Where were slaves kept? Which were the plantation counties? And you see, this group of black like neighborhoods, that's where they settled after slavery ended. It's like really immediate stuff, and it's a debt owed that this nation never paid.
I don't necessarily agree on reparations, but I think we need to clarify what that ultimately means. But I will say, I've long held the same position. I actually worked on a documentary. There's an issue of people who were enslaved, then they were released, and they were not given any means to actually develop and grow. And so there's a generational wealth gap between people based on race for these historical reasons. The challenge I see, I suppose, is, we've done a lot to amend the laws and change them. For instance, redlining and blockbusting have become illegal, and now we're dealing with an ultimately, I believe, is a class issue. Of course, racism still exists. But anyway, I digress on that point. What I wanted to get to is specifically on reparations. What do you view reparations as? More importantly.
So
this
is a big divide. Some people think like cash payments. I'm not a big fan of that. It doesn't fix the problem, for one. It's if you can put money into that community, but there's been research done on how long a dollar stays in a black neighborhood as opposed to a white neighborhood. And if a black neighborhood, all of the businesses are owned by corporate
people?
boards that are all majority white.
Boards.
Eventually, the money filters out, and you get a very temporary boost in living situation. Not much long-term structural change. I'm a big fan of structural reparations, not based on race, but rather based on targeting neighborhoods that need it the most. Some of these neighborhoods are like white. I passed through some of them on my way out from Ronald Reagan Airport. I can tell which parts of this country. You can see it in the bones of the neighborhood. And I think that a new proper reparations project, a new deal even, would go a long way. Get some
so
work
you're
crews
saying
out
not
there.
even based on race?
Two big things: New Deal, Reconstruction 2, Electric Boogaloo. All right, the South has lost their privileges of governing themselves. They never knew how to govern themselves. They still don't know how to govern themselves. I'm sorry if I have any Southern people who like the South. I'm sorry that you have Stockholm syndrome. It's just not good. It's bad.
I think that we should recognize that this is largely a racial project because, unfortunately, poverty and race are really intertwined in this country. But in terms of applying it, I think that it would be much more healthy if we treated it like a collective effort to bring up the lowest sort of echelon of our economic.
So I want to ask you, Charlie, would you agree with a program that was in how do I describe this? Explained as reparations, but was not based on race, went to people based on class and neighborhood, so that it could help Latinos and white people and Asians and everybody?
First of all, I'm against reparations. I just don't like the word because it kind of implies this intergenerational type guilt or allowance that I kind of reject.
What the fuck is happening? I've never, this is someone reaching so hard to try to find some way to dislike something. So I really don't like the word reparations because it has to do with some like guilt or something, and it just makes me sad. okay, all right. Is the white guilt play? Yeah, nothing. This is incredible. They always want to bring it back to making white people feel bad when it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with white people, as it concerns the state. And has everything to do with the United States of America. This is the United States of America giving back to these communities, not white people giving. It's not even effectively white people giving back to giving their money to these things. It is just the country. Because still, I'm black, okay, and I would pay money. I still pay taxes, and that tax money would be used to do some reparations. That is not even like the same thing. Also, Zello Mello, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime.
And I'm happy to build that out further. Do I agree that the question is mostly class? Oh, absolutely. And I think that Vaush is hitting on something. And I think
he's calling him Vaush, ironically.
You're saying that it's inherently racial. I really want to explore that with you because I think that's interesting. I think you're wrong, but I think that's interesting. Where I think the racial thing is actually being used to distract people like you and I from actually talking about what's really happening here, which is a small group of people getting a lot richer while normal people get poor. And I think the racial thing is being used as this distraction tool to throw smokescreen in the middle while we're talking about something that we're never really going to have consensus on, when the true struggle right now is mainly economic.
Yeah, well, I think that applying reparations along racial lines runs into a bunch of really tough issues. Which neighborhoods? Do you go by like blood? Like, can you prove your great-great-grandfather was a slave? It gets very difficult very quickly. Maybe that would be the most direct interpretation of generational reparations. But in my mind, The reason why it's important to recognize the racial issue here is that the nature of class divides in this country is cut into racial policy prior to the Civil Rights Act. The redlining that took place, lines which still remain not in law but in practice, led to very distinct, I mean, sometimes, one side of the highway is nice and the other side of the highway, I mean, it legitimately
Can I just jump in real quick?
Uh-huh.
I'm from Chicago. 47th Street was split by race. No joke. This has long-standing effects on the city. Just to point out. No,
and I grew up in LA, and on either side of the 5, which cut through the city, I mean, or the 405, sorry.
Let me right just
there.
interject something too, and I don't know if you're familiar. We were actually told that we would be arrested from the south side of 47th if we crossed 47th. We would get arrested because the cops would pull up and say, "You don't live in this neighborhood. What are you doing here?"
I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, so I've heard stories like that. I'm very clear to say I'm not from Chicago.
I grew up in Beverly Hills, which is close, though, to West Hollywood and Koreatown, and the lines are clear as day. The reason I say that.
Oh, if we're all sharing, I grew up in Brooklyn and St. Louis, Missouri.
That though about like the racial project is that because explicit discrimination is no longer in the law, we've pretty much wiped that out, with the exception of some
Charlie's
edge
from
cases.
The burbs.
The project of systemic racism, or the existence of systemic racism, is something which is carried through class by inertia. It isn't something you can explicitly legislate along anymore. I mean, obviously, nobody's out there passing laws like black people can't do this. That'd be silly. But instead, the consequences of slavery and of second-class citizenship for black people left unaddressed, a wound left to fester that unfortunately can't really heal itself inertially unless we do something specific.
So the issue with that argument is that the more that we intervened in the black community, it actually had the opposite effect. And Thomas Sowell probably has done the best research in literature.
Wait, you know what? We should have done some Gamba. We should have done Gamba. We should have been like, so Charlie Kirk is going to bring up these like 5 people and you guys can bet on if he's going to do it. There it is, the Thomas Sowell quote. I don't give a shit about what Thomas Sowell has to say. The guy is like completely disregarded in every single academic field ever. He's just a clown. He just writes books and conservatives love to lap it up because it makes them feel good about never having to worry about racism ever because it's all vanished and gone. It's just so ridiculous. So, Thomas Sowell, so true. Yeah, we should have made bingo. We should have made bingo. We should have. This is ridiculous. The thing is, when the black community started to experience like a downturn, however you would like to describe that, other races were experiencing a downturn as well. That's the same thing. The single motherhood rate was going up for black people. It goes up for all races. That's just like what happens. That's what happened. Crime rate went up with like black communities. The same thing happened with all races. Sometimes to lesser extents, but black people were more likely to be on the edges. So if anything happened, if you're in a precarious position, that's going to harm you more. Like our house having a pop tire, that's bad for us financially, but we probably won't be like financially destitute the same way someone who has like kids to feed and like lives like just above the poverty line and lives paycheck to paycheck with like barely any money in their pocket. That's going to destroy them in that way.
Literature on this. You can laugh all you want. He's got
I wasn't trying to besmirch.
He's a very thoughtful thinker, and he actually lived through this, right? He lived through the black.
He's a thoughtful thinker. He thinks his thoughts. That's fucking wild. This pause screen's going kind of crazy. Wait, you guys are right. The pause screens are wild.
Renaissance in the 40s and the 50s, where redlining was a legitimate problem. So was yellowlining, by the way, against Italians and against Jews. Nowhere nearly as bad, but there were other degrees of discrimination based on ethnicity and cultural background. And the black community, especially, the area really well in the south of Chicago, right near the Chicago stockyards, the black community almost had this rallying cry where they were being discriminated against everywhere, and they kind of collectivized their purchasing power, and they saw their incomes increase actually at a higher rate than white Americans in the 40s and 50s and early 60s. You've heard this argument many times, and you probably, disagree with it, but it's just true, is that the moment that we all of a sudden de-emphasize... Also, what's really important to realize is that their income probably increased at a higher rate because they had more of a ceiling to get to.
They had is like a law of diminishing returns. Your average like middle class household, you can have a really high rate of return from going from like $12,000 a year to like $50,000 a year, but moving from 70,000 to 150,000, it would be like a lot harder for people.
Fathers being in the home and subsidized fatherlessness, we saw all these other trends increase. So in right before the Civil Rights Act passed, about 24% of black children were born without a father. Now it's upwards of 70%. You guys can look at the Washington Examiner. It's 77%. Let's say it's 65%. So something has to explain that 40-point increase.
May I?
Yeah, just let me finish.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that America got more racist. It could be the cocaine thing, which, is a common issue. It could be, operations of all these things. But a 40-point increase, I would point to a culture of fatherlessness, really bad government-run public schools, and then...
What do you mean a culture of fatherlessness? What does that mean? Is it like, is he saying that there's like a black people's sort of like Hanukkah, but not Kwanzaa, where all black people get together to celebrate the fact that they don't have a dad? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Culture of fatherlessness.
Subsidizing behavior that isn't good.
So there are a few things that I can agree with you on. First of all, having two people in your house to raise you is pretty much essential. You absolutely
Glad
need
we
to.
agree.
This is undeniable. While I don't believe in shaming single parents, even if their single parentedness is a product of bad decision making, it's still good. You need
win up for everyone
in this economy. One parent, honestly.
Yeah.
But with that being said, there has been research shown that the rate of black fatherlessness is somewhat over-exaggerated, in large part because that number only applies to married fathers, so husbands raising their children. It turns out when you account for unmarried black couples taking care of their kids, the numbers actually rise to those just below white couples. I think there was an article on that. I don't know if I saw it in Vice, but it tracks back to some really big study that was done back in 2016. So that's one point. But you are right. There are perverse incentives. For example, many welfare stipulations cut off with a shared income, which is only a few $1,000s per year higher than the necessary cutoff for the single income. Meaning that if you're a single mom, you can apply for the welfare just fine. But then if you get married or otherwise file jointly, you go above the cap for welfare. This is a horribly designed program, undeniably, and it incentivizes bad, destructive behavior. The best thing that we can do, we restructure the welfare system in this country. Welfare is good for us. It is. I don't benefit from it. No, I don't think either of you benefit from it, I'm guessing. But we do collectively downstream from the increased economic potential of people who now have the money to afford daycare, proper childcare, get an education. In the long run, people in this country being richer enriches all of us. It's a mutual project. So we work on that. We find out what works and what doesn't, which welfare programs function, which don't, which types of economic revitalization function and which don't. And I legitimately believe that if we applied this country has the bones to be just a permanent economic beacon on the hill, just like a shining example to the rest of the world.
I agree with a lot of that. The bigger issue with the racial thing is that when you put some of these factors in even to present data, it doesn't pan out on racial lines, right? And this is where I think you'll agree, because you just said 2 parents in the home is a good thing, which we totally agree on. I think that's the ideal. Everything shows that is something that we should, push for.
3 parents, maybe. Getting even better.
Oh, yeah.
50%.
Yeah, polyamorous relationships.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Wait, Charlie, but you said, what is this? What is this evil blend of Charlie and Vaush? Oh my God, this is awful. But no, Charlie, listen, you said more parents in the house is good. Just keep on stacking parents. Look, 2 parents working and 2 parents at home. What much better? How much more better can it be? Come on. Chouch. I hate Chouch.
But I will say that if you look at the data from the government, that a white child being raised by a single mother is less likely to succeed by 10 independently picked metrics than a black child being raised by a mother and a father. And so maybe it's less about the skin color and more about the removal of parents and specifically fathers in the homes. Now, if you want to talk about a domestic Marshall Plan to go put fathers back in the home regardless of skin color, I will sign up for that in a second.
With the right welfare.
Excuse me? What do you mean? Domestic Marshall Plan? What, are we going to be hunting down fathers and chaining them to the inside of their house? Fucking what? Male wives? Hey, buddy. Listen, Charlie Kirk, he's on the opposite. He's on the opposite side of what we think conservatives are, all right? Handmaid's Tale, opposite of Handmaid's Tale, okay? Charlie Kirk said Squad W on Handmaid's Tale. We're putting fucking fathers in the home. Government mandated boyfriend. Let's go.
They're the right systems. I think people will tend to their own families.
But that would then all of a sudden de-emphasize what you said earlier, where it says it needs to be on racial lines. Where I say no, it needs to be on nuclear family lines.
Well, no, I think that the neighborhood revitalization should just be on like a sort of class assessment. I think that when we recognize this problem, though, there are so many trends when it comes to poverty that involve the discussion of race. You know, and there are some which do not. There are some types of poverty, some effects that are just ubiquitous and equally felt. But with regards to, say, black people, the fact that they couldn't get loans to purchase homes for a very long time. I mean, there were people living who couldn't do this. The fact that they didn't benefit from the Marshall Plan, if I remember correctly, after World War II.
Well, Marshall Plan was Europe. You're talking about the GI Bill.
Oh, sorry, the GI Bill. My apologies.
Let me just point out all these white guys sitting here having a debate over the black community, huh?
I just think that there is a lot of economic inequality. A lot of it's tied to race, but trolling. We don't need to turn this into some weird blood quantum issue where we go tracking down every black American and holding them under a microscope to see whether they get benefits. Now, we just need to tend to our own.
This is where we kind of got off critical race theory very quickly.
I forgot about that.
I want to bring it back.
We're agreeing way too much, Tim.
All right. Well, because this is one of the issues I see, right? You see these conversations around, I don't know how you describe it because it's a variety of things. Wokeism is typically a catch-all term for some kind of ideology that involves anti-racism, which involves critical race theory, critical race praxis. And you're seeing in schools specific curriculums where they say to kids like, we had a book here. Mm-hmm. We had a book brought to us by one of these parents who's been going to these schools. And it was an anti-racist curriculum workbook where it asked children why they thought that black children felt bad about their skin color. Now, I take issue with those things. They had another book where it was a little girl yelling at her mother saying, "You're lying to me about race." And then there was a whiteness contract with a devil tail coming out of it.
Okay, I saw that one.
Yeah, these are in schools.
Yeah, okay, so the whiteness devil tail thing, I saw that. That's indefensible. Yeah. I'm not going to stand at that. With regards to that, what was it? Why do you think black folk feel bad about their skin?
And I'll be careful because I don't have the book in front of me. Mm-hmm. It was something to this effect. It was a bunch of questions where it would ask you things like that and then ask you to answer. What have you done to make someone based on their skin color behave or whatever and things of that nature?
It's behave. I think these are conversations that are worth having. I wonder, with regards to what you're saying, do you know what grade level these were at?
I think she mentioned the woman. It was Asra.
Asra.
I think 4th grade.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
But I got to be honest, like the anti-racist one, didn't have any pictures or anything. It was just questions, and I think she mentioned it was in a 3rd grade. The what was it called? What was the book called about the whiteness contract? The one you said was indefensible. That one was like a little girl who looked to be about like 8 years old. So
yeah, I saw that online.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to just piece,
yeah, sure,
issue by issue. Ibram X. Kendi, who's kind of one of the, archangels of the wokeism movement.
Beloved figure in the minds of conservatives and liberals alike.
So Ibram X. Kendi, and I'm paraphrasing, and you guys could pick up the quote, is that we need discrimination today because there was discrimination yesterday. That's the essence of the quote, right, Tim?
Yeah, he said the only solution for past discrimination is present discrimination, and the only solution for present discrimination is future discrimination.
So I find that to be reprehensible. What say you?
I think, well, also, for one, oh no, we've got Chaush again. Well, for one, to make sure, like, there can be like positive discrimination as well. You can discriminate amongst your partners. So that's just like being choosy. So if you're a girl and you're looking for a partner, you discriminate amongst your partners, as in you don't date the dude with like no job who gets money from his mom and smokes all of the money in weed except for the money he uses to buy skins and cod. So that's like typically, and that's typically the guy that you discriminate like against when it comes to like dating or something. So that what he could be describing could easily just be affirmative action. But that is a so stop talking about me like that. Sorry, but I'm in the stream and I don't like it. As the form. So he could be like haphazardly trying to explain affirmative action in a very weird, very like aggressive way that makes that makes very few like little sense, but it'd be that way.
I think it's misguided in large part because I don't believe if there was some god who could just distribute all resources in a perfectly ordained way and did so at the snap of a finger, then maybe that would be a decent argument. In the real world, we have to go through politics, and any kind of discriminatory treatment under any circumstances, no matter how well intentioned, is going to have adverse effects. So with regard to what he said, there is a very charitable interpretation, and that charitable interpretation is discriminatory practices in the past necessitate favorable practices today, a way of bringing people up. My reparations argument, the poor in this country have always had it bad, at least worse than they could otherwise. That is essentially a version of that argument. Preferable treatment towards the poor. We do this with welfare because there are systemic barriers keeping them from full participation. Along racial lines, I don't even know what that would look like. I don't even know how that would look good. I'm not a big fan of affirmative action.
He wrote an amendment, right, called the Anti-Racist Amendment to the Constitution. It's not being considered anytime soon, where it would be preference.
You'll see, Biden will get it.
Yeah, based on skin color, that there would be some sort of accommodation based just by the melanin content in your skin.
There is one thing I want to say, though, and this is common in upper academia, and I know IDRIM sometimes gets brought into non-academic discussions, which I don't consider myself an academic, so I'm including myself in that. But sometimes I think these are fun to discuss, these ideas. What I noticed, at least in some of the classes that I took, the higher end classes, was that sometimes when you were presented ideas, they were presented not to have you agree with them, but rather to incentivize the greatest discussion. For example, I wasn't an economist, but I did learn about Karl Marx. Now, not many professors are actual Marxists, unfortunately. So when Marx was brought up in that context, it wasn't like, here's what you need to know, here's what you should believe. It was more, here are some ideas, radical and agreeable. What do you think about them? And when I look at what Kendi has written, I don't often agree with some of the more radical propositions, but I do enjoy the process. And I don't think that's something which should warrant the state intervening to cut out those discussions. I think that's a great brutish response.
That's a great segue, if I could go. So the next question then is, should we be teaching first and second and third graders to be hyper conscious aware of race all the time?
Here's the thing. You know what's really, how late am I? Oh, we're like, how far are we into this? We're about an hour. Listen, by their definition, by Charlie Kirk's definition, what he's advocating for right now is communism. This is communism. Okay, this is communism by his definition, because to him, communism is when the state does things like that's discriminatory and mean, that he doesn't like when the state comes in and tells you what you can and cannot teach. To him, that's communism. Welcome, comrade.
I think that's destructive. I think it goes against the American promise of e pluribus unum, of caring more about character than skin color. And yes, Martin Luther King Jr. was a mixed bag when it came to this stuff.
He's a cool guy.
But he was a very radical socialist in some regard, but he really hit it perfectly when he said that this was the ideal of the American system. Do you see any downsides to getting 3-year-olds just caring, not 3-year-olds, third graders caring about the color of people's skin all the time?
Well, I think depending on their environment, they might already, whether they know it or not, in very implicit and subtle ways. We know from tests done, for example, on little kids, like 4-year-olds or whatever, that some elements of implicit racial bias already infect their thinking. Now, that isn't a moral judgment. We're all flawed beings. We live and we die. We all have biases. That is just a part of life. But I think conversations about those things can be valuable. I don't believe we live in a colorblind world, so teaching people that we do can often lead them to remain ignorant to evident problems. Now, to what extent would you be comfortable, what would you say, bringing a racial consciousness to third graders?
For me, very little to none. As don't care about it, de-emphasize it, look at the spirit, the soul, the conduct, and the character of the human being. Their skin color means nothing. Not saying that you should start to emphasize, organize what people look like, because therefore it means something that we're going to tell you. A great example is that this is the textbook definition of stereotyping, right? Is that if you see a black person, you don't know their history. You don't know if they're the son of a Nigerian billionaire. You don't know if they're an immigrant from Turks and Caicos, and you don't know if they're the 9th generation descendant of slaves, right? There's been 2 million blacks that have come to America legally through the immigration process since 1980. So this sort of hyper fixation on race, and I want to keep on getting back to this because I'm just curious, is do you think this is actually helpful when there actually might be stuff that 90% of the country agrees on? Do you think this actually might be a smokescreen tactic?
Well, it really depends on what's being taught. So here are some things I obviously don't want taught. One group is better than another. Of course, black people are like this, white people are like this.
That is being taught in some schools.
There are some schools that do that, and while I would look to see their curriculum mended, I just don't want to implicitly agree with like a state ban. I would see adjustments done. But there are some things that I think could be done well. For example, say you're teaching about very basic early history,
This is where I wanted to get to.
Yeah, okay.
This is important.
So here are some things about America's founding that I like. One of the first practical liberal democracies, glory of the republic. Folks had nice hair back then.
Not a democracy, but a republic.
Right,
That's
well,
okay.
I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. And we, of course, did more to fulfill the promise of a democracy with time. But obviously, when America was founded, it was a slave state. 1 in every 6 people in America at that time was human property.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How many states had abolished slavery by the time the Constitution is ratified?
Well, I don't know the exact number.
How does
9
this
out of
matter?
13. That's not a slave country.
Well, then you could say it was a
What? Huh? What? What does that matter? What? What is this? What is this argument? I've never actually heard this argument before, and this is my face to it. This is the face that I make. Well, hey man, actually, that cult is a death cult. You know that, right? Like, you get into the cult and they'll have you kill yourself. Well, you know how many people have killed themselves out of the 100 that joined? What? How many? 10. That's not a death cult. 90 of them are still there. Like, what? What? This shit is incredible. This is incredible. Listen, the country still ran off of slave labor. The industrialization boom happened specifically because of all of the excess resources we had because of slave labor. But this is actually wild. I'd never actually thought someone would try to make this argument. That there are states that ban. Also, at that time, wasn't there still like runaway slave laws? So if like those states that banned slavery, if they found that slave, they'd send them, they'd ship them on back. Still, so they'd be actively enabling slavery still. It's not a slave state. All we did is gain resources from slavery, work with slavers, make sure that slaves stayed on their plantation, and then reaped all the benefits. That's not a slave. We're not a slave state. Yes, what the fuck? He's like, actually, it's not a slave state because we have multiple states. Like, all right, buddy.
Confederacy with portions that were slave
I think
states.
that's better said. 9 out of 13 had already abolished. There was a sunset moratorium for slavery in the Constitution.
So this could...
Vermont abolished slavery in 1777. We were on the way to eradication. We were not a slave country.
Well, hold on. I mean,
and I'll add one thing.
We were on the way, but then like 80 years later, it was still happening.
So the question is why, right? That's a really important question. And
economics.
Because economics and people still want it. Why? What's going to be his thought process? What do you mean why? They wanted to?
Yeah, so Cotton Gin and John C. Calhoun. Happy to go through that. But yeah.
There was actually a grievance in the Declaration of Independence, specifically that the Crown had enslaved people.
The first draft.
Yeah, in the first draft from Thomas Jefferson, the Crown had enslaved people who had done nothing to offend the Crown, brought them to the states, and then were then offering them the freedom that was stolen from them to wage war against the colonists who had grievances.
It's an effective strategy. The Union did it too. They promised the slaves when
Right.
they moved southward. Yeah.
Jefferson took that out, and he did it because they felt, and this is according to historians, that without, I think it was South Carolina and Georgia, they would not have been able to win the Revolutionary War, and so they had to remove that, hoping they would stay in. Now, the reality is, let me just. So we remained a slave country because
we wanted to win the war. I think not a slave state would be a state that bans slavery and not like add in slavery. My brain is melting because of this argument. This is so bad. It's so bad. Thank you, God the Third Being, for the 2 months in a row. I'm going to DM you something on Twitter. Maybe you can check it out. Okay.
So one more point. They thought they were going to lose anyway. They really did. They didn't think they could go up against the greatest empire in the world at the time. So it's kind of unfortunate, I think. An important factor here is that I believe it was the British Empire, actually 1833 had abolished slavery in all of its territories, and it took the U.S. a little bit longer to do so. But I want to make sure I stress, this issue for the start of the country was contentious and ultimately led to violence because from the beginning, as Charlie pointed out, most of the states had already abolished this. So it was like people were ready to fight from the beginning.
I just want to say to that, my understanding of the founding of America isn't as simplistic as the founding fathers were evil because X or Y. I recognize, of course, that...
And I appreciate that.
There are incredible complexities to those issues. And also, I'm not a historian. There are probably tons of things out there I don't even know that might change my opinion in the future. But, with that being said, while I recognize there were fine-bodied, hearted, and souled Americans who recognized slavery was a moral aberration from the get-go, 1 in every 6 Americans was owned. And while that may have been constrained to some of the states, it was still ultimately under the purview of the federal government to make decisions with regards to the legality and constitutionality of that. Now, some people, they get really defensive when this conversation comes. I'm not saying you guys, but some people, they do. And I think it's because they think I'm assigning some kind of moral worth to them now or to the country now or making some kind of broad prescriptive statement. I'm not. The only thing I'm saying is when you're teaching history to a bunch of kids, you have to teach it all. At least you have to teach the basic pointers. And for Black Americans, the history of this country has been less than favorable. So I think that in the context of that discussion, saying, and to this day, we still have some problems with race. There are some legacies of slavery that still affect Black people, and we're working on it today. Something like that. That's a kind of racialization that I'm in favor of because it doesn't encourage stereotyping, it doesn't encourage discrimination, it just encourages a base awareness of some serious problems.
So, but that's not happening, right? Is that largely what we're seeing through school districts like Chicago and in Washington, D.C., and the entire California school system, representing 10,000 schools and 6 million students.
I've seen the documents on those.
Yeah, is that it doesn't have that kind of nuance and complexity that you just presented, right? Where let me just say this, is that part of the kind of archangel triumphant of the wokeism coalition is Nicole Hannah-Jones, Robin DiAngelo, and Ibram X. Kendi. And Nicole Hannah-Jones in particular, right, the author of the 1619 Project, she heretically says that America was founded on slavery, right? And so
I'd be okay with that.
But it's just not true.
It depends on what you mean by founded on.
She defines this. She says the founding fathers were in favor of it. Not true. George Washington.
That was true. That was true. Like the people in the room now, literally not every single one of them, but the people in the room, a good portion of them, like their job was to like they went home to their plantation where they owned human beings. They had a human being farm.
Wasn't, John Adams wasn't, John Quincy Adams wasn't. Thomas Jefferson even signed a moratorium of new slaves coming into the United States. Ben Franklin chaired an anti-slavery convention in 1775. None of these guys were writing expositionally how wonderful slavery was.
Well, this isn't being taught to third graders, right? The 1619 Project's a little New York op-ed.
No, it's not. See, that's where you're wrong. The 1619 Project's being implemented as school district curriculum in thousands of school districts across the country.
That's true. Across the country.
It's not just like a podcast. This is curriculum.
Right, there are principles of the 1619 Project that I think are defensible. First of all, we as Americans tend to think of the founding of our country as its legal founding, But the legal founding of the United States didn't really mean much for a slave. I mean, it really didn't matter that much for the peasantry of the time, no matter what.
See, that's where I disagree. So when was the first state to abolish slavery? Vermont in 1777. Why?
Well, I mean,
because they were inspired by the Declaration of Independence. Things started to change in that year.
Right, but the slaves that then continued to be slaves would have been in the states that didn't make that choice, right?
Which were largely in southern states. So
Well, that's what I mean. I didn't mean to miss out on the particulars there. The only point that I'm making is that depending on whose lineage you follow, depending on the narrative that you tell, this is a very postmodern idea. And I would like to consider myself charitable to postmodernism, the idea that there are many ways you can describe the human experience, which I think we all believe to some extent. Depending on who you follow, you get very different ideas on what America is, when America was founded, not in a legal sense, but in a conceptual sense, and who today holds the birthrights to which they were entitled. And these conversations should be had. They're worthwhile conversations to have. I've seen some of the curriculums in these schools. I find some of them a little bit objectionable. But to be perfectly clear, I've found school curriculums objectionable for ages. About half of Americans believe in the lost cause myth, the idea that the North started the a civil war and it was over like states' rights or whatever. That's believed by a large number of Americans. There are
But Vaush, most of those people are in the South. That's not a country that half believes in the lost cause myth. Oh no, have we dropped some frames? Oh no. Wait a second. Wait 1 moment. I'm so sorry, everyone. We're gonna close camera for 1 moment. I want to make sure. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. One moment. Okay. Sorry. I want to make sure that we just dropped like a couple of frames. I want to make sure that it stops. Yeah, it's the CIA messing with my my internet as CIA does. Yes, indeed.
textbook.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Fragile Corpse, for the Twitch Prime. I really appreciate you and the follow as well. Thank you.
Put out by Pearson in Texas that have
there
narratives
is some
in them
truth
that
to
are,
that, by the way, just so we're clear. I'm happy to go through Civil War history.
Well,
I just want to say I have long had problems with many of the ways children are taught concepts in this country.
That's fair.
None of them have made me want to get my state legislators to just outright ban all of these ideas.
Well, so let me I'll make 2 points. First, the 1619 Project is in schools. Newsweek reports U.S. schools have openly taught the 1619 Project for months. This is back in September. We've got Education Next. The 1619 Project enters classrooms. We have the Pulitzer Center, the 1619 Project curriculum. Here you will find resources for teaching 1619 in your schools. And I don't know if I have one more source. Right? Then we move to the.
Do they read the full thing in class? That's crazy. It's pretty dense reading, you know.
They do it. And then lawmakers push to ban 1619 from schools. So it's there. It is.
And so let me tell you why people like myself are pushing for the bans of the 1619 Project. Is that first of all, it's just not true. It is not even charitably, in the most charitable reading, to use a word that you used, even remotely fair to the ethos or the founding of the country. It doesn't go to original source documents. It doesn't go to quotations, and it meanders through generalizations and very heavy emphasis on emotion.
Can I ask something though, really
Sure,
quick?
go ahead.
Is this not being presented as an alternate perspective as opposed to replacing the entirety of our curriculum?
No, it is. And this is an important thing, which is what is education, right? So is education where we're supposed to, for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th graders, open up every single bad idea that's ever been discovered and have kids choose? Or are we trying to lead them towards something? Lead them towards having better developed character? Lead them towards trying to find objective truth?
Moral. We want to make them moral.
I agree. And so the question is, what is good? What is evil? Well, we don't know a line is crooked unless we have a straight line to compare it to.
Well, you know what I think on this, don't you?
I actually don't.
The narrative we've told about the founding of this country has for a long time been deeply whitewashed. We talk about the founding fathers like they're heroes, and there is heroism in their lives, no denying that. And we often gloss over many of the horrors of this country. There are things that we've done, for example, that we would use as an incentive to forever despise other countries that nobody's even taught about. Like one I read recently, for example, was that we did mass chemical bathings, and I believe it was sterilizations of Hispanic people at the beginning of the 20th century, moving up past the southern border, because there were like these militias forming in towns near the border. And they just did it because they had the de facto support of the local government as a way of discouraging their movement up. Now, the numbers involved in that are significant. And I feel like, well, that's maybe not great for 4th graders, there could be more work done to talk about the faults with this country in addition to eulogizing its
Well, the question is,
largely
what's
white
the
leaders.
goal, though, right? Is the goal to try to have young people graduate by the time of high school to be skeptical, apprehensive, and not very proud of the country, or eventually tell a true and patriotic story where you have people graduating that are thankful and have gratitude? That's the purpose.
Well, there it is. And there it is, boys. At the end of the day, what he wants them to be is to love the country, to be patriotic of the country. That's what he wants. That's the thing that he really needs. He wants to tell this beautiful love story, hero, the like Odyssey like story of the country. To kids, to have them believe it. That's what he really wants. When faced with like the horrors, when faced with like the discrimination, the blatant racism, the torture, the like all of these things that we've done, the meddling in other country, when it comes to that goes on the back burner, because what we want to tell is the good story of what we think that we should believe, right? But that's what we should be believing. And you can tell the story of America as the sense of, we started off with this founding document that on its surface, if you read it, should have been a good country. But if you looked at the reality of what that meant for lots of people, it wasn't that. And you can even take the stance that, like the history of America is trying to live up to the founding values that we set for ourselves. We set a goal and we've been struggling to get there. That can be something, but you have to tell what the falls that we made. By actual definition of trying to make people patriotic, if that's the goal, you will be editing some parts of American history that don't make you feel good. You're going to be editing out the bad parts. You can't teach American history while being both true and patriotic. I mean, depending on how you want to define that, I think that's very true. You can still love America and love your country, but in more of like a, as Charlie said, a more eulogized sense, in a more like abstract sense, like this is where my family is, and I like the flag and I like all of those things. But man, what we did to those people at that point in time, this, that, and the third, and what we're doing over there, whew, baby, that's bad.
Purpose of education when it comes through.
Gratitude is not the purpose of education.
Well, I think gratitude's a moral necessity.
No.
That's creepy as fuck. That's creepy as hell. Wait a second. Gratitude is not the purpose of education. I think gratitude is a moral necessity. You better be thankful for what we did. You do not have to be thankful for the people that came before you, for anything. You don't have to be thankful for them for anything. You didn't choose to be here. Absolutely not. Yeah, that's not good.
Oh, you should be grateful. It is not the purpose of education.
Well, I think gratitude's a moral necessity.
No.
I don't like that at all.
You should be grateful for the people in your life, but I will never be grateful to the state. I'm not that much of a collectivist.
Well, not a state. Are you not thankful that you live in America?
I'm thankful of the things that make my life easier. I was born white to well-off parents, and today I enjoy many of the benefits of having really responsible and attentive parents.
Are you thankful you have constitutional rights that are protected by government, given to you by God?
But do you know how those constitutional rights came about? They were fought for by whiny bitches like me who were never satisfied with what they were already given.
They were granted by God, protected in the Constitution
in 1787. They were fought for by whiny, same as the 14th and 15th Amendments, everything that's come since. We fought for them, and it is discontentedness that leads us to fight. Then? I'm thankful for their efforts, as am I for
there's some gratitude.
Sure, I'm grateful to them. But patriotism, I'm grateful to what people in America do. But America's a concept. It's been used to do a lot of good and a lot of harm.
It's a home.
Well, a home can be a...
That's so weird. It's a home. It's a holy place. You do not understand, Vaush. Can you imagine? He says this. I can see this in one of those like creepy like 3D modeled videos. He's like, no, it's much more than that. It's a home. And then Charlie Kirk just starts fucking floating and glowing. He grows like 6 wings and 17 eyes, like he's a biblically accurate angel, and he's just the pure light just blind. No. know, dude. It's just it's a concept. It's a country. That's all it is. It's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Sure, like the land itself, the land that your parents own where their house is on, that's a home, I guess. Sure. It's just an arbitrary line in the sand, and then we plant homes in it and we put laws over it. That's what happens.
I mean, in the broadest sense, but I know what my home is. I know where my family lives, and I'm loyal to them. When it comes to this country, though, this is a political and economic bloc, and I have only one concern, and it's that the people in this country live the best lives possible. Also outside the country, but I live here. This is my backyard, and when I want people graduating, from high school, I don't want them to feel this sense of contentedness. Contentedness is the death of activism for all that's good, and activists have always been. You're an activist in your own way, as am I, have always been the forerunners for good.
They've done a lot of damage too.
Sure, they have, but we make the world move. And I want to get kids interested in the flaws in this country because that teaches them to grow up and care about them so hard they fix them.
This is a great piece of disagreement. We have clarity, not agreement, which is obviously what we want, where I think that we should try to be developing and graduating kids with strong character that want to appreciate and protect a country, and to try to be active against forces that wish to deconstruct it. Your goal, and we're just not going to.
What do you mean by deconstruct? What does that mean? I guess that gets more to the idea of like, what is American culture? What do you mean by like deconstruct the country? Like sometimes you can deconstruct something and then add new blocks that are better. That's good. I'm sorry, like the abolition movement, that in a form is deconstructing. That was incredibly deconstructing the country. I don't care, like if it was if it was like a 5-mile square that held all of the slaves in the country. If a lot of the economic prosperity, especially from the South, was contingent on specifically the slave market, that was an incredibly big thing. That was what the entirety of basically the Southern America ran on, which was slavery and businesses adjacent to slavery. That was a great deconstruction of the country in a good way. The whole point of our constitutional amendment process is to be able to build the country and deconstruct the country. An amendment can take away another amendment. An amendment can make a new right. That's the whole point. This is like really weird. This is not how America is supposed to be run.
Persuade each other is that you want to try to graduate activists that know the flaws and are willing to mobilize to try to fix them or to undo whatever system might be effectuating. Is that fair?
As long as it's responsible and effective, yeah. There are ways to do progressive. Of course, I'm a progressive, so I'll say it's good by default, but there are ways to do it poorly. I disagree with people on the left constantly, either over issues of actual concept or issues of optics or issues of engagement. I always find something to disagree with people on. It's very fun living. But with all that being said, I have to wonder, is it not the prerogative, and I'm not assigning this to you, of tyrants to make sure that the children who graduate from their schools find no fault in the nations they're taught to love?
See, I never said no fault, but you could be thankful for something, and you can have a holistic view of something and understand that there were stumbles and there were missteps while also being.
I don't know, dude. Just like you can. The thing is, what he's doing here implicitly, he's like, we're this great country. We did all these great things, but we had a couple of stumbles, like the legal kidnapping, raping, torturing, murdering, forced labor of tens of millions of people. And we had a couple of missteps, like women being literal property, couldn't own property, and couldn't vote. And we made a couple of mistakes, like genociding the Native Americans, like invading other countries, dropping nuclear bombs. And some things have gone a little wrong. We dropped the ball on this one. We dropped the ball on that one. Oopsie daisy, whoopsie, sort of cartoony, sort of like slipping on a banana peel. You need to teach people the real gravity. This is not just a story you tell. These are people's lives that you can see. It's not just a little oopsie daisy that America did, that he wants to play it up as, because by playing down those tactics, by playing down that history, he can upscale the sort of gratitude to think that this is like near pure, near perfect.
pretty freaking proud of that something. How exceptional this project
What
is.
if there are current problems, like today,
We should talk about those. Like we already talked about fatherlessness, government overreach. Tim, you want to interject?
Oh, no, I think it's interesting to me. You're from the suburbs of Chicago. You grew up in Beverly Hills. Somebody commented, I think it was on Twitter, they said that when they went to school, they weren't taught about Black Wall Street or the Tulsa bombings and things like that. And that's proof, or that shows that our schools are not teaching. And I was like, I was taught all those things. In Chicago. We were taught about the Trail of Tears. We were taught about westward expansion. We were taught about the violation of treaties.
I was taught a lot as well.
Yeah, we were taught a lot about that.
When we learn history.
Sure, but isn't that really surprising that you go to some schools and then they're like, yeah, dude, slavery was the slave, we don't like to use the term master. It's more like boss. That's also a friend, he's like the cool uncle. And they were like skipping daisies and they were just like doing a thing. And then the Northerners came and ruined everything. I mean, that's how it's Basuwu. That's how some people were taught about these things. When you have a lot of these states, when they have almost complete control over what they teach these kids, you can come up with a lot of crazy things. You can't sit here and be like, oh, I was taught that. I went to school in a very rich suburbs, Chicago, and everything was pretty cool for me. Like, okay, cool. Your experience is not the only one. We don't have a complete standardized education system in this country. It varies wildly.
What we're really
just like the strength of chairs. Wait, I got any big boys in chat? I got any big boys when they were in like elementary school, middle school, high school? You sat down in one of those like desk chairs in English class and one of the legs fucking collapsed and you hit the ground. I got any big boys that ever happened to you? It's happened to one of my friends. Big boy.
learning is a story. I think it's called historiography. Obviously, when we're just looking at the facts of history, I mean, what is it? Data and sheets, wrote transcriptions of things people have said. Nobody teaches that. You teach the story. And the story we've told for a long time has bowled over a lot of problems I think we should work to fix. Do we want people to be thankful? Sure. I don't want to...
So we agree on that. Good.
I don't want to stop teaching kids that there are undeniable things they should be happy for. For example, every day that I worked before I was a YouTuber, I thanked union activists back during the turn of the 20th century who gave us the 5-day work week, the 40-hour work week, who ensured that we had proper standards for lunch breaks and what have you in this. And they fought and they were whiny, and I'm sure a lot of them had really bad ideas besides the worker activism. But we all benefited from that.
Do you ever think that as an activist, as a progressive, a libertarian socialist, is there ever a point where the activism actually does much more harm than good, and the preservation of what already exists actually should be desirable?
I would say that's the case with black separatists. There are some people in this country, not all of them are black, of course, but who believe that the racial problems between white and black Americans are irreparable, and that the best solution would be for black Americans to leave, or at the very least to form separate enclaves within this country.
And that's nothing new, just so you know.
I don't think
it's very old.
I don't think that's what Charlie asked. He asked you if there. Do you want to rephrase?
Yeah.
Sorry if I misunderstood.
Well, you were in the general area, but I guess the question is a heavy emphasis on activism for activism's sake, mobilizing for grievances. What if actually what we have as a constitutional order is actually pretty awesome?
Let me ask, do you think there are things worth, systems in place in the United States that are worth defending?
That's a better way to word it.
Yes. Do you believe that there are systems in place in the United States that we should defend and preserve?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are ideas. For example, the concept of democracy, the concept of fair representation, the idea that anybody could have a chance if they make it here. These are ideas that I think are almost sacrosanct. I mean, I think they're almost existentially worthwhile. Now, to what extent does this country live up to those promises? In some ways, it does so better than most other countries, sometimes any other country. In other ways, it could do better. Income mobility here, which is the measure for how effectively this country manages its meritocratic systems, is higher in some European countries than it is here. The idea remains valuable to me, but I can't help but think maybe we could make it better. If making it better entails some highly destructive process that involves tearing down everything we've ever known and such, then, I mean, eventually you have to do a risk-reward benefit, right?
So what I'm trying...
So I'm I'm wondering, he's trying to, I wonder what he's trying to get at. He's like, are there some things in the country that activists should like stop at? Can you guys think of anything? The only real way I would think that I would be able to answer that question in a way that's like yes would be concepts and ideas, the way that like Vaush did. Like the idea of the right to own a firearm, and the idea of like democracy, and the idea of freedom, of like what is it, fair trials and things like that. That doesn't mean it's perfect now. It doesn't mean it's perfect now, and we shouldn't be fighting to make things better. But I like that idea, and those are ideas that are just ingrained in the Constitution and ingrained into like what we would aspire to as a country. Those are things that we would like really like to keep. A lot of other things I think need a pretty good overhaul. Like actual laws, like actual systems that are in place. Maybe there's some like small things that we need to keep here and then improve on there. But just to say, like, plainly, is there things that have just gone too far in the sense of like the black separatist thing? I don't even think that's not a progression. That's a regression. You're moving backwards, moving into segregation. That's moving backwards. That's looking backwards. That's not moving forward. That's going backwards. So that's not activism. That's not positive activism. That's moving backwards. There.
To caution you about is that the people pushing CRT or wokeism, they don't have the same sort of nuance that you do. These are revolutionaries that want to tear down the system.
But I am as well. I just think that everything has its time.
You just had kind of a little bit more of a moderated answer.
But how often do actual critical race theorists come on like all of the like talk show circuits that end up? I mean, we've had some. I mean, Joy Reid advocated for it, but the actual scholars.
They're running Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. They're running the United States military. They're running They're assigning these ideas. Again, wokeism. Let's use that.
We all know that why Lockheed Martin is so successful, because they inject every one of their rockets with CRT.
Shark, Pog.
Did you know that critical race theorists are developing missiles for Lockheed Martin? Every missile actually misses a dark-skinned Arab. Did you know that? Did you know ever since we started working with Lockheed Martin, the missiles have a program that miss dark-skinned Arabs? It's fucking crazy, dude. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Who could have seen this coming? Yeah, the woke rocket. Are you guys ready for the woke rocket?
I mean, no, with Robin DiAngelo and the federal
white fragility.
Right. I'm not a big fan of her, largely because I think her language incites a lot of negative discourse. I think that it's bad for publication. Maybe good in an academic setting.
So not good to teach generals that.
Like for some random people at like a business? Absolutely not. No.
General.
Oh, is he getting towards that's what I see. He's leading towards that one general. I forget his name. That one general who's like, yeah, I read Marx. Yeah, I read CRT. It's good to learn about things because learning about things is good. And sometimes you can find good things in it, and sometimes you can find bad things in it. And reading is good. And Charlie's like, I can't believe that fucking general fucking reads. Holy shit. He was so scared.
Generals in the military.
Oh, yeah, sure, no.
Because that's what's happening.
Well, the big problem that I have, but keep in mind, that's not wokeists running these things. What happens is this, and put pretty simply, the majority of Americans broadly are progressive on these issues. Support BLM, all these sort of broad cultural markers. So corporations and other large entities think we need to avoid a cancellation. We need to appeal to the business interests of this country. We need to do something to ingratiate ourselves to the majority opinion. So oftentimes, and they've done this for decades, by the way, is they find some consultants, they pay them $300,000.
Like Robin DiAngelo.
To come on over there, and Robin DiAngelo's job, first and foremost, is to convince everyone who hires her that she was worth that money. So is she going to come over there and write like a PowerPoint like, don't be racist, like, come on, be cool? No, she has to go all out. And what you get are these cringy, like the Coca-Cola PowerPoint, where you get, look, some of the things there are defensible. Does systemic racism exist? Sure. Should we be aware of the concept of like implicit bias? Yeah, fine. That's good. That's just normal human things, I think. But some of the language in there really made it seem like she wanted white people to feel a little bit bad. And I don't want white people to feel bad. I don't want anyone to feel guilty over who they are.
What percentage of this country do you think supports Black Lives Matter?
Well, I know that at its peak after George Floyd's murder, it was something like 71%. I think since then it's trended downwards. Is it gone below 50?
Yes. And,
wow.
well, it depends on where you go. I use Civics. They have 237,458 responses from April 1st, 2018 to August 2nd, 2021. I think they do a pretty good job, but there's always, I know, a challenge with polls and whether they, their system. The peak support was 53% after the death of George Floyd. And opposition actually declined fairly steadily. There was no major spike in opposition. There was a major spike in support after the death of George Floyd. However, there was a rapid escalation of opposition. According to Civics, current support for Black Lives Matter is 45% and opposition is 42%.
Those numbers are really different from what I might have looked at Pew Research. I couldn't tell about the methodology, which is more valid.
Well, and it's actually, CRT, the filler word, is very unpopular. So I would look at it differently.
Oh yeah, see? And this is like a really big rhetoric game. It's a really big rhetoric game, and lots of people always play this around fights for civil rights. They want to play rhetoric around a lot of these issues to get people to disapprove of them. So when people like Fox News can say Black Lives Matter is CRT, that makes that says that there needs to be a government policy, there needs to be a constitutional amendment to say that every black man born is entitled to fuck 3 light-skinned girls in his entire life, and that's like how it goes in Joe Biden's America. And then people are like, oh no, this is actually horrible. Listen, that's just kind of how it. Wait, what? You said Nina Turner lost? Oh, did she lost? Here, 1 second. We refresh. Is this? Oh, has the race been called? This race hasn't been called yet. Or did someone call the race already? Oh, Wasserman called it, really? Is that true? Here, 1 second. We're going to take a quick detour because there are 2 important things happening today. Nina Turner's lost. Someone better go find her. Ban that guy. I can't believe you. Chantel Brown defeats Nina Turner in high-profile Ohio race. Is this big true? Racially diverse. Turner who served 2006, 2008. Who called this race? Okay. This is it is 42%. So we're still at 42% reporting. They may have been like there's no way that Nina Turner can make up those points. Maybe, I don't know. We're just gonna have to see what happens throughout the rest of the night. But maybe we're just gonna have to see. Oh, of course, they'll always inject like a whole bunch of money against these people. That's how it goes. They have money, we have people. That's just how it goes. I don't know. It says this has just happened. I don't know. We're just gonna have to wait and see throughout the rest of the night. If other people start calling it, then you can probably say that it's probably gonna be that she'll probably lose. But as far as if it's just like one person, we're just gonna have to see. I wish nice things happened. Well, not every nice thing can happen. This is what happens when you call Joe Biden a bowl of shit. Is that what she said? You just have to watch your language. You gotta watch your language a little bit. You watch a little bit of language. When was the last time nice things happened in the movement? 2 years ago when we got well, actually not even 2 years ago. If you remember, we did a video on it in Nevada. the DSA and socialists took over the entire Democratic Party in Las Vegas. That was a very nice thing and happened not even 2 years ago. But in the last election cycle, we got Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. So not every nice thing is going to happen. But, you know, it be that way. It be that way sometimes. Oh, what's this? So this from the decision desk? Well, what are we looking at?
Shark, Pog.
See to open after Marcia Fudge. Oh, it's Fudge? Ah, I see. Ohio. What comes in a primary? These two candidates running the Republican Party. Okay. 13 candidates. Wow. Oh, and this is the decision desk. Ooh, big decision desk. I mean, we're just gonna have to see. Not 54%. Yeah, I mean, Nina may not be able to make up. She may not be able to make up the ground, which is unfortunate. But you know, it just happens. It happens that way. $1.2 million in ads. Whew, that's a lot. Okay, I want like 10% of the nice things to happen versus the usual like 2%. Well, I mean, you just got to get there, okay? We still live in a reasonably conservative country, and with a lot of really big conservative media out there, it just kind of happens that way, you know? It's kind of be that way. That's fine. You can't get everything. Yeah, it's been like 9 months into the last election. It happens. You know what? Don't. I'm tired. Listen, why is everyone is always so, wait a second. Why is everyone so damn doomer about everything all the fucking time, bro? Listen, you can't have everything win. Remember what happened with Cori Bush? Cori Bush lost her seat. Well, lost her run back in 2018, did some groundwork and then won. Now that won't happen with literally everyone, but you need to just do more work. Nina Turner just came off Bernie Sanders' campaign. I'm not sure exactly how the campaign was run, but she can run again in another 2 years. That's not even like that long. And there's still going to be more progressives, and there's going to be more progressives coming into the Congress after that. It's this isn't just an entire loss. Not every election cycle is like the end. As long as Nina Turner is still alive, she can still be in Congress. Goodness. Yeah, just push forward. Don't make this like the end. Nina Turner can still run. You know what'll happen if you have time next go around? Drive to her city. Go do some door knocking. Go donate some money. This isn't the end. We're still progressives. Like the progressives have not been wiped out of Congress or anything. Just win. Honestly, you're right. Just win. Run a better campaign next time. Destiny definitely lost this debate. I wish Destiny didn't ban in this debate in his YouTube comment section. One of my favorite things about watching Destiny videos on YouTube is scrolling into the comment section and seeing who came up with the in this debate meme. That's me personally. Debate is not over. We're taking a quick break to stop chat from dooming in my chat. The comments are good. This is true. No matter what. I mean, you want to ask me who's winning this debate between Charlie and Vaush? I don't know, but I do know Destiny lost this debate. That's what happens. Every time, sorry. It'd be that way. No dooming allowed. This is a no dooming chat. Sorry. All right? This is a no doomer chat. This is not anybody else chat. This is a no doomer chat. We only have positive vibes here.
Certainly. I think these corporations have been infiltrated by highly motivated activists, which you said the education system, the goal should be to create activists that have really bad ideas. And I think they're putting America on a trajectory that I think you are even concerned about. Because you said that there are some sacrosanct ideas, right? The sacrosanct ideas are general fair representation, Wokeism does not believe in that.
Well, no, that's not true. I would say, I mean, I don't know what you mean by wokeism, but I think that there are plenty of progressives.
Defined it, which is that the idea of judging people based on skin color, discrimination.
I would say that what I've advocated for represents the supermajority of progressive opinions, and what we're largely seeing is a couple of really bad examples being brought to the limelight because they're most objectionable.
Sure. To be fair, though, I mean, you might have these very, very well thought out views of things. You could say, oh, that's indefensible. Of course, I don't want to be unreasonable. But when you get Mark Milley coming out and talking about white rage as a blanket,
I thought his speech was lovely. It reminded me of those old like Chinese philosopher generals.
But you have people quitting the
what the fuck? But no, yeah, Mark Milley. I don't know what was wrong with Mark Milley's speech. Do you guys remember Mark Milley's speech? That's the general that he's referring to right now. That's Mark Milley, who literally was like, yeah, I've read some CRT. Yeah, I've read some this and that. Yeah, I've like read into like Black Lives Matter, and I think reading is good. Reading is good. Learning about things is good. Sometimes you learn good things about things that you read, and sometimes you learn bad things that you read, but sometimes you should read them. I've read Marx. Am I a Marxist? No, but I like to read. And then conservatives just started screeching and shitting themselves. So, you know.
Military over this stuff because they feel like they're. I've actually spoken with people who retired because they've been discriminated against on racial lines they don't like. And one guy I met said he was planning a lifelong career in the military and immediately got out because they implemented these policies of like white racial trainings. They were told that the symbols of America are no longer allowed to be displayed like in private because they're extremists.
In the military?
In the military,
okay,
yes.
Well, I can't speak.
Tim, are you hiding your crack pot under there? Are you hiding your crack pipe under there, bud? Is that your works cited? What the fuck was that? Wait. What did he even say? Military bans what?
Allowed to be displayed like things. They were told that the symbols of America are no longer allowed to be displayed like in private because they're extremists.
In the military?
In the military,
okay,
yes.
Well, I can't speak to any of that. I haven't looked into the particulars of that. The only
Gingerbread Fetus, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. You're way too kind. Thank you so much. That's too nice. Aw. Why you do? Well, congratulations everybody for you just got gifted a sub. Now you can use some of the emotes. And everyone who's watching right now, since I feel like I have a lot of people here, even though I don't know how many people I have, if you are subscribed, make sure you get into the Discord. Why? Not just because I can make fun of you, personally, while I'm off break at work, but because we have a subscription. We have subscription section in the Discord, and if you want to play games with me, if you want to be in any sub only and YouTube member, it's not just subs, it's YouTube members as well. YouTube member only events and memes, playing games. If you want to be a part of that, I gotta be able to talk to you, friend. So you join the Discord, connect your Twitch with your Discord, and then you can get a special role. You'll be almost the same color as me. If you're colorblind, you will be the same color as me. And then we can have fun. All right. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And listen, if you're watching right now, hit the follow button. Why are you not? It's literally free. It's so free. And also make sure to check out our YouTube member program. We can subscribe basically, but for cheaper if you're a YouTube frog.
The only thing I want to say is that it feels like with Robin DiAngelo, we've seen this pattern for decades now. I don't think it has anything to do with infiltration. I think it's the big ups, the CEOs, the project managers, whatever. They know there's some broader...
Wait, is he talking about the Confederate flag? No way. Oh my... Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no. Oh no! Oh, self-reporting. Hello, self-reporting. American symbols. Our American symbols are being banned in the military. What? I love how he hops and skips from being like, oh yeah, listen, we weren't a slave state. Only a couple of states had slaves. And then the flag that those couple of slave states had, he's like, I can't believe they're banning it. I can't believe this. This can't keep happening. I can't believe that. Divisive symbols. They banned divisive symbols. Incredible. They also banned, just so you know, they also banned the pride flag. Oh, wait a second. This is the American symbol that that Tim was actually talking about. It's the pride flag. Tim, are you trying to tell us something? Is this the stream where Tim's gonna come out? That shit's fucking crazy.
Political, social, cultural trend happening, and they think, who's someone we could get? And if you look up racial sensitivity training on Google or anywhere else, some names are going to pop up, and we know which one comes up first, and they just hire that person because they've got money and they need to spend it before the end of the quarter so their budget doesn't get cut.
Do you think that it should be... How's the right way to phrase this?
He's thinking
if a corporation were to tell, say, white employees that they had inherent characteristics based on their race, or that they should undergo some kind of course or class based on their race, should businesses be allowed to do that?
You mean legally or like morally?
Both. You know.
I suppose legally if they want to. I can understand people being upset over it. I don't think there's anything wrong with racial sensitivity training and concept. The problem is that it's almost always done by this consultant class of like upper middle class, like WASPs who are really, really intent on getting their own milquetoast veil of progressivism pushed down the throats of whoever they can have paid to listen to them. If it's a good course, everyone should be able to hear it.
Wouldn't that violate the Civil Rights Act, though?
It might. I guess that I would defer entirely to law. If it turns out to be unconstitutional, then he had it. I just want to say, though, that while we are fixating on bad behaviors here, and there's nothing wrong with that, I do maintain my insistence that I think the vast majority of progressives would agree with what I have to say. Though, keep in mind, there are always going to be a mix of good and bad ideas with good social movements. Even the Civil Rights Act, or the Civil Rights Movement, which we all know and love today, can't deny it. There were plenty of people acting there whose ideas I disagreed with. Malcolm X, when he had his black separatist phase, though he amended that before he died. There are even ideas of Martin Luther King's that I maybe could question if I spoke with him. He wrote a book after the Civil Rights Act. Where do we go from
here? Yeah, if we could speak with him, if they hadn't killed him.
Here, chaos or something good. And he said a lot of stuff about the responsibility for white people to not make amends, but to educate themselves on the experience of black suffering so that we no longer just integrate. We truly assimilate. We know we're a collective bond. There's always going to be some disagreement. Is the movement valid? To me, a movement which recognizes the racial discrimination, the systemic racism that exists, that there are problems we have yet to overcome, this is a movement worth defending.
I just want to make some data points real quick, and then Charlie, you can come in. Man. So first, the one thing I wanted to highlight, let me actually pull this up, is that net support, which is support versus opposition, before George Floyd died for Black Lives Matter in this country was 16% net support. As of today, according to Civics, it's 3%. That brings it all the way back to 2018, to August 16th. Now, one of the things I think is really important to note is the severe tribalism and hyperpolarization.
Why did he pull up that second poll? Can't you do, that's like, this is just like the simple math of, wait, was that chart for people who don't want to do the math of what is 45 minus 42? Okay.
This country. So if we look at support for Black Lives Matter among Democrats, 86%. Support or opposition for Black Lives Matter among Republicans, 86%. Opposition. Mirror image. You take a look at independents.
We're more alike than we may think, huh?
Right. You take a look at the independents, though, people who don't align, and I would say, what is the date around May 1st, there was an inversion, and now the majority of independents oppose Black Lives Matter, 44% to 39%.
That's not surprising to me, given that there's been very little in the way of optical. I'm sorry, you haven't spoken in a while. I apologize.
No, I
just wanted to make those data points. Just to clarify some things.
I wanted this to be more of a discussion than a debate, so I think it's actually really helpful. Are you concerned when certain judges or people running for DA say that accommodations on sentencing should be made on race? Does that bother you?
Who said that? I've never heard that before.
Well, people in law schools have been saying it.
I mean, students have always
Kim
been...
Fox in Chicago has heavily implied that communities of color need to be accommodated for in sentencing. And they've all but done this by just getting rid of the bail laws that we've seen altogether. Well, right?
Bail is bad though. Get rid of bail. Why should someone sit in jail because they don't have money? Whatever happened to fair trial? If you didn't know, actually, if you sit in jail before your sentence, before your trial, you're actually more likely to be go to jail and be sentenced to jail. So being able to get out of that, work more with your work more on like other things, that's good. I don't know why someone should sit in jail just because they're poor. If there's a law that only affects people with like no money, it's not a law for everyone. It's just criminalizing poverty. Oh, so what's up, Miko?
Decriminalizing shoplifting, all that, please.
Oh, I'm totally okay with that. We lock way too many people up, just flat out. That's not even...
So like murder out the next day.
What? What? Is this guy... What's happening? Yeah, we lock way too many people up. We should probably stop throwing people in jail for 5 years for shoplifting a candy bar from their local 5-star. Yeah, man, maybe we should stop throwing people in jail for 10 years for an ounce of weed on them. So basically you want to make murder legal. Got it. Shoplifting is illegal, is equivalent to murder. Well, as you see, if the candy bar is an extension of someone's life, then basically when you're taking the candy bar, you're taking that time in someone's life that they used to get the candy bar. So basically you're stealing their life so they can take your life for an extension of you stealing that. But I mean, there's some merit to the argument that property is like an extension of time that you've used in your life to get that property. But bring it back, bring out of the memes, out of the meme hole. This is a ridiculous argument. It's just going from like 0 to 100 instantly. This is like this is like Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles used the same argument where Demi Lovato was like, Joe Rogan asked Demi Lovato like what their like dating preferences, what does like being, what was it, fucking pan? They asked them what being pan was, and Demi was like, oh yeah, so I'm like open to a lot of things. I'm really open to just about everything. And Michael Knowles was, everything? You're just about open to everything, so you have sex with kids, right, Demi? Like, this guy's out of his mind.
No, not murder. You said shoplifting.
Well, I'm just saying, just the bail reform laws in New Mexico and California have been a disaster.
Well, I can't speak to that. Oh, sorry.
No, here's actually a really great point. It's a tough one for me. I agree. I think we lock way too many people up. I err on the side of liberty, innocent until proven guilty. To take a working class individual who is accused of shoplifting before he's even been proven of guilt, lock him up for several months, he loses his job. However, what do we see in San Francisco? Mm-hmm. Wave of shoplifting, businesses shutting down, because when you don't stop the crime, you get, I guess, a lot of crime.
Yeah,
it's a tough issue. I wanted to let you guys.
I think we'll totally disagree on this. You first.
Maybe. Well, I've read a lot on recidivism. We have a fairly high recidivism rate in this country because really the thing that causes crime more than anything else, it's not actually poverty, it's income inequality. When poor people and rich people share the same space, it leads to a lot of problems. All poor people together in a neighborhood, what is there to steal? Poor people and rich people together in a neighborhood. There you go. You have very clean targets. And what's more, there are other forms of criminality that only really fully express themselves in the types of neighborhoods that have a really strong mix of wealthy and poor. I could see that because, again, from where I grew up, I lived on the border of a lot of low-income communities. Now, Beverly Hills, safest place you could be. 3 a.m., you want to take a jog, go for it. Seriously.
Not anymore.
Maybe. Oh, I haven't been there in like 5 years.
You'd be surprised, man.
I'll say this.
Good luck walking Rodeo Drive now.
Well, okay, Hurston, I don't want to walk Rodeo Drive during the daylight, okay?
Well, I agree.
I agree.
Yeah. After Garcon has had his work in L.A., it's a disaster.
Violent crime is...
Oh, boy, I love... Look at this room of coastal elites. Where am I Mr. Midwestern frogs, okay? Where am I like southern frogs? Where am I Where are you? Where are you inland frogs? All right. I'm sick and tired of these LA natives saying shit like this. I can't believe this. I can't believe it. GA, there you go. Get these freaking Beverly Hills socialist, all these people from LA, get the heck out of here, bro. Get the heck out of here, bro. Alaska, are you okay? Are you guys okay up there?
Down since the 90s. We've had a bit of an up since COVID,
up
but
massive in the last year.
Oh well, COVID's led to a lot of really weird exigent factors.
Well,
but
defunding the police.
with all, we haven't defunded the police anywhere.
That hasn't happened.
Maybe okay, in a couple places.
A lot of places.
Hold on a second.
Wait.
That's not,
Wait. I'm not even sure if that has gone into effect yet. Whenever they're referencing from Minneapolis is looking to reform their police department. Has that even gone into effect yet? They just say that these things have happened. Lots of people are saying, oh, the police has been defunded everywhere. There are like bills passing through like state legislatures, like city councils are like revoking some contracts that they're having with police, and then like renegotiating them in a way that's more fit. That's not just defunding the police. I'm not sure at this current moment when we're speaking, if there are very many places in this entire country where the police budget is significantly smaller than it was in the last fiscal year. I'm not sure if that's even, I don't think that's true, like at all, like almost at all. Also, I'm trying to look up stuff on this like shoplifting wave in San Francisco, and I'm not sure if this is even real now that I'm thinking about it. Now that I'm looking into it, I don't want to like share something with you that may be like untrue right now, so I'm not going to share it just yet, but
not true. Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, they've all cut police budgets.
260 departments, I think it was reported last year, had stripped their funding from
Sorry,
departments.
when you said defund, I thought I meant like the anarchist vision of like community policing. When it comes to police funds being stripped, there is a conversation to be had about the relationship between that and crime, but the crime increase seems to be all countrywide, so I don't know if I'd be leaning more towards that being a COVID thing and people being restless and angry and, I don't know, aggressive. The thing that I'm trying to say, though, is when I grew up in Beverly Hills, really, really safe, free from violent crime. I could walk half a mile, though, and the area between rich and poor were the areas where people had barred windows. Every time. So when it comes to criminality, there are things that we can address very fundamentally that will help everyone. I'm sure there are restructures to bail laws that we could do. I don't know the particulars. It's not my field. I've also read stuff on recidivism. Apparently, murder actually has a very low default recidivist rate because usually it's done under a very specific set of heated conditions that don't actually speak to a person's character, which makes you wonder a lot about like moral worth and what really drives a person to do that sort of thing. I think it's something we should look at critically, though I don't have any really strong data-based argument.
Oh, what the fuck? So basically, one really big thing that you need to look at when people say stuff like the police were defunded, you need to make sure they know what they're talking about. Because when you say defund police, what they could be doing is scaling back where police are, how police operate, and moving some operations outside of the police department themselves. If you move things like forensics, if you move things like public relations outside of the police, if you move things like internal investigations into another body, you're in theory you are defunding the police, but when people think about that, what they think is, oh, now they've just like cut all the cop budgets and they've cut like this and that, and now police are like doing nothing, and instead of being in like cruisers, they're all in like fucking beat down BMX Walmart bicycles with like billy clubs trying to arrest cops, like trying to arrest like perps running away. Like that's not what's happening. That's what people see. You can move like I think in Denver, what they did, they moved police out of schools, or they're moving to reduce the amount of police presence at schools, which saved $34 million, and then they put it somewhere else. Yeah, it'd be that way.
The last thing I want to say, because it's the first point that you brought up, is racial responses to the criminal justice system. Yeah, I didn't forget. I'm actually going to triple down on this one, okay? Not only do I think that we should aggressively look at the ways our sentencing...
They have cops in schools? Oh yeah, we have cops. Hey, like we have, you guys, if you are in school right now, or if you did go to school, you had cops in your schools, right? Yeah, we had the like truancy officer That type of person. We had like 1 or 2 cops. Yeah, cops in mind. Yeah, like, yeah, we have police at our schools. There's usually like a cop or 2 that's assigned to like a single school. I got a ride to school by one of the by one of the our school cop while he was still on the force. Cool guy, Officer Ramsey. Love you, Officer Ramsey. Oh, he's not even Officer Ramsey anymore. He's Chef Ramsey because he stopped being a cop and he started being a chef in the early college and career program when I was in senior year. So he's not even a cop anymore. I'll never forget when he tackled one of the Yeehaw kids for bringing in an entire gym bag, duffel bag full of dip cans to sell to the freshmen. Good days. Good times. Good times. Yeah, follow your dreams. It wasn't Gordon Ramsay, no. It wasn't Gordon Ramsay, no. But Officer Ramsey, he was cool. I always liked Officer Ramsey.
Laws affect and discriminate between black and white people and Hispanic and Asian. I think we should do the same between men and women, because as much as black people are shafted by the criminal justice system, men are even more. If you take a look at the disproportionate rates of sentencing, relative levels of implicit bias in the jury, women get off with way more than men
Vaush
do.
MRA confirmed.
Way more. So
Squad W,
maybe
boys.
it's something we can all agree on. We're guys, I think.
Well, so the issue though is that when you remove race, it's just a matter of income or wealth. For example, if LeBron James goes in front of a jury, he's going to have the best lawyers. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's an extreme example, right? But O.J. Simpson had an all-star team. And so the problem is that...
Obama. He would also have good lawyers.
O.J. Simpson? Oh, yeah.
Obama.
No, sorry. I was going to say, he didn't have...
Wait. Wait, what was happening? Obama. You were just naming famous black people. He was confused for a second. He's like, O.J. Simpson is not Obama.
You don't have Obama as a lawyer.
No.
Let me say.
Kardashian.
Can you imagine the conservative like conspiracy theories of Barack Obama back when he was practicing law? Wait, was Barack Obama ever a lawyer? I know he went to like Harvard, right? Or Yale, one of the two. He went to one of those dipshit nerdy ass law schools. Can you imagine if Barack Obama was O.J. Simpson's fucking lawyer? The conservative conspiracy theories. Obama more like Beta got him.
And Dershowitz.
I would just like to interject that Obama extrajudicially assassinated people and nobody did anything about it. So
now that's black privilege.
But
that's a joke. Don't.
But I think that there's an implication in your argument that I want to challenge, which is that just because you're poor doesn't mean you commit crimes. I think that's an insult to poor people. Right. And so I think that if you automatically assume that, now there are data trends to suggest that, but instead it should be the question of what are we trying to structurally do or through incentives to either punish the people that are committing crimes and lift people out of that current level. So I think it's a good talking point, but I don't think it's totally true to say we have too many people in prison. I think we have the wrong people in prison. Let me tell you why.
We have more than like any other country.
No. Let me tell you why. Yeah. The average rapist serves 4 years in prison, and they're very likely to rape again. Totally different than murder.
Look, if you want funding that goes to police departments to go towards actually looking at the rape kits that they take rather than stuffing them into a bin,
250,000 untested rape kits in the tri-state area in New York City. 250,000, right? So our criminal justice system, you could say it had nefarious intentions. I'll be neutral on that. Was very heavy on drugs, obviously in the 80s and 90s. But generally, though, you cited the number. You said violent crime's been down since the 90s. Why do you think that is? It's because we were tough on crime in the 80s, and we had a massive campaign against it, and we had the most peaceful decade in American history.
Well, there were a few factors. The viability of broken windows policing has been challenged substantially, but there are admittedly some benefits. The argument that I would make is that what you're really doing is you're forestalling the problem. There are socioeconomic conditions that increase criminality, not because it makes people worse people, but just because oftentimes crime isn't some direct indicator of poor moral conduct. Oftentimes it is a crime of necessity, or it is a crime born of the discontent and the apathy.
So I gotta challenge you on that. What would be a crime of necessity today with the welfare state that we have? What would possibly...
Dude, it's just an incredible idea that every poor person is being taken care of. I mean, here's why they're poor people then. if the welfare state, if Uncle Sam swoops down and picks up every poor person and puts them in a home and they get 3 square meals a day and everything's epic and our welfare system is so good and it does so many things, then why are there even poor people? Is he just going to say that they're stupid or something? They're just too stupid to understand what's going on? What are you talking about? Like, our welfare system really is not that good. There are people, why do people slip into poverty then? If they had access to all of this like great wealth, why are people on the edge of being evicted from the? Why are what was it, like hundreds of thousands of people across the country are about to slip into like destitute poverty and be evicted from their properties? I mean, yeah, what welfare system? Honestly, you talk to someone who has to live on welfare, they'll tell you what welfare, bro.
Be a crime of necessity.
I know I can at least speak to personal experience that I knew some people involved in like they said they would sometimes peddle drugs, and they did it because while they may have been accounted for by the welfare state, their parents' medical bills weren't. Not sufficiently, not even close. Stuff like that. Now maybe legally if that person got arrested, the law says they have to be. I could never morally condemn them. They were trying to save their mom, man.
But I got to push back on that.
Sure.
I mean, for sure it's anecdotal, but
it is. So it's not like a data point.
I never understood this, having grown up on the South Side. Seeing people sell drugs is not the fastest and easiest way to make money for someone who's desperate. I mean, no joke.
Plasma sales? What would you say?
I made $140 per hour playing guitar in front of
as you see, selling drugs is not the fastest way to make money. Look at me, Tim Pool. I took my camera and I started recording things, and now I'm sitting here with making $5 million a year. If only every poor person does this, then they could be as wealthy as me as well. See, what I did was I played my guitar. Wait, stop right there. How many poor people that you know own a guitar? How many poor people you know can afford a guitar and have the time to learn the guitar in a way that people would want to listen to them play the guitar? What? As you see, I played my guitar. What are you talking about? So all you need to do is start your own like jazz band, all right? And there you go. Easy money, boys. Step 1, start a jazz band. Step 2, question marks. Step 3, profit. It's easy. It's as easy as that.
A baseball field. Now, I understand not everyone can play guitar.
Skateboard.
Or skateboard. Sure. I knew a guy who said he just bought t-shirts. He went and bought bulk t-shirts. So the people who are selling drugs...
What? He bought bulk t-shirts? And then what? He was... as you see, my friend got out of poverty. He's a PS5 scalper. What? He just bought t-shirts. He bought bulk Yeah, he was in a pyramid scheme. Yeah, as you see, my friend, he bought 30 bulk t-shirts and now he's the CEO of Avon. I mean, come on now. You can all get out of poverty. Just never do illegal. This is true. Just never do illegal.
They got to buy the drugs first, or they get a loan, and you can do the same thing with socks. And then people go on the side of the road and sell socks. I think the choice of committing a crime was the choice.
Well, it is. Well, hold on. It is always a choice, but what we're really talking about is the limits of determinism here. How much do we choose the things we do? You can make an argument that it's all. I mean, you're religious, of course, so you wouldn't have this argument. But
I wouldn't have anything close to this argument.
Right. From a secular perspective, you can make the argument that at the end of the day, the things we do are driven entirely by the chemical reactions in our.
Soxala? Oh man. Fuck, dude. I went to the local laundromat and I came back and I'm only left with my left socks. Fuck. Looks like I'm gonna have to take a trip to the corner, to the guy on the corner selling a Walmart, the guy on the corner pushing a Walmart cart full of right socks. Man. Ugh. Just fuck, dude. No way selling socks is in any way near more lucrative than being like a gangster or like selling drugs or doing something illicit on the side. Like, in no way are you going to sit here and tell me buying bulk t-shirts and bulk socks is now like going to be the new fad for poor people. Come on now, be honest.
our brain, and therefore everything that we do from start to finish is just a combination of random molecular patterns and blah blah. We don't live our lives like that. Obviously, I make a choice to get dressed every day. We know how this works in practice, but in practice we are also the product of our environment. And the fact that, for example, having a single parent while growing up is a pretty strong criminal indicator is a suggestion that, I mean, is it an indicator of a person's inherent moral worth that they were born with a single parent? Probably not. So that statistical difference has to be accounted for by the inevitable fact that environmental differences can lead to harsh outcomes.
The question is, though, do you then create a set of lack of enforcement to say that we're actually not going to enforce looting, where you had an entire article in National Public Radio, not saying you believe this, that says the case for looting, right? San Francisco's basically employed this, $900 or less, they're not going to prosecute you, right? Videos of them stealing entire Walgreens, right? Not an exaggeration. And then you have
they stole an entire Walgreens. Holy shit. They walk up and just fucking peel the Walgreens up from its foundation and just throw it over their shoulder. Wait, listen. There's a case to be made that to not prosecute those small, those like small crimes, reasonably small crimes, like $900, like from like a Walgreens or something. There's a case to be made about that because, well, it may not be good there. It could reduce violent crime in other places, which is something that we really worry about, is like violent crime, right? If like, and still, like, what do you mean by like prosecute? Do you get like a ticket? Is that it? If they find you looting, do they mean not prosecute in the sense that you won't go to jail or you won't get a fine for that stealing? Because you could still like just get a fine. You can take a fine to court, but that would be you prosecuting. That wouldn't be the state prosecuting you or like your county prosecuting you. Those are two different things. You can still be fined for something like that. You can still get like a citation or something, but it wouldn't be like you now like sit in jail for this thievery. And if that happens, so let's say if like shoplifting goes up by 20%, but violent crime goes down by 10, 20, 30%, you have to like be like, hey, is this worth it? Is this worth it? Yeah, it's like it's like they move it down to like a misdemeanor. Let's say hypothetically. And I've seen that in a lot of places where like these sorts of like small like or like petty crimes or like shoplifting or theft is moved down to being a misdemeanor. So it's handled a lot less seriously, which could be actually really good. I don't know. I think stealing a toothbrush from Walgreens shouldn't land you jail time. You know, it's just better for society. But lots of people don't like that because they really like the punish.
And just one other data point, just because of COVID, Europe's crime rates did not increase. Ours did. And we had a massive defund police, almost kind of we're going to be relaxed on criminality type movement. And this is the question, right? Which is how many excuses or accommodations are we going to give for crime?
Well, we're not.
And I'm just just to finish is that my perspective obviously is very little to none. Crime's a necessity. I could think of one, maybe two examples.
Also, here's a really big thing here in the U.S. and I want to let this play a little bit more. Here in the U.S., we have more cities and bigger cities than they do in Europe, and cities are more likely to be like places with higher crime. They usually have higher disparities in poverty. This is why like we typically have a little bit more crime. A lot more crime than Europe. It's because of like large cities. But that doesn't mean that we should go back to like a monkey mode. But that's like a thing to worry about.
Examples where I would make a moral claim of a crime of necessity, and that would be a revenge crime if someone murdered your wife or your kid. Maybe.
Necessity?
I'm not saying necessity. I'm saying like a moral accommodation where I could say I could see where they came from. Not necessity. Let me rephrase that. But the idea that in the welfare state that we have, with the private philanthropy kind of generosity we have, that shoplifting and arson and looting, mugging Barbara Boxer, that we should just say, it's actually because of the environment.
I don't know why you pointed at me when
I
have never mugged Barbara Boxer.
I'm saying that as an example.
Yeah, I don't mean. Was
that you in San Francisco?
Where were you?
No, I've gotten stolen from in San Francisco before. It was a very fun experience. That was back before YouTube too, so I couldn't afford to replace anything. Okay, a lot to respond to here. Emil Durkheim, cool guy, dead now, thought that crime was sociologically useful because it shows you where the antagonisms are between people's wants and the state's desires. So crime takes place where there's an agitation between what people are being compelled to do by whatever, their own behavior, their desires, and what the state will allow you to do. So for example, during a food shortage, we can take like Ireland during the potato famine. There were, to put it lightly, quite a few cases of theft during that time because people needed food. They would do anything for it. So the crime of theft in that instance becomes a sociological indicator of a social need that isn't being met. Now today, of course, we do have admittedly a fairly weak but existent welfare state.
It's rather strong. It's very generous.
Yeah, it's a little baby
multi-trillions of dollars every year.
Yeah, for America?
I will say you get $70,000 in value a year. That's plenty.
I want a UBI. We can go way harder.
We do have UBI. We just implemented it with the stimulus.
No, we don't. No, wait, hold on.
That's not a UBI. That's not a UBI. That's not what that is. Just get okay. Cash influxes are not a UBI. Here, 1 second. Here, I'll leave you guys with this. I'll be right back.
The child tax credits with well, no,
people
that's
got cash checks. We have UBI now.
Well, it's not a long-standing program.
I'll admit that, but we tried UBI and crime went up.
Well, hold on, hold on. I need to reject the spurious.
We send checks, people commit crimes.
Hold on, this is a spurious correlation, okay? First of all, you will not be able to find any analysis that attributes the increase in crime to people getting their stimulus checks.
No, I'm saying it's the opposite. The argument you're making is that if people have a sociological need, they won't commit the crime. So people got money and they still committed crimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't always correspond one-to-one like that. The reason why people needed money is because they weren't getting any money from their jobs because they couldn't work their jobs. So people were still in a worse position.
Well, they also got unemployment. Remember, very generous unemployment.
The unemployment started
plus
pretty generous.
$600 to $800, right? I think it was a week or a month, right? It was very generous.
That
run through, and not everyone is applicable for unemployment. There are a lot of conditions there that can make that difficult.
No, they were very generous. They didn't turn anyone down during the lockdown.
We're being very spurious with our
We're very wonky. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just
oh God, where was I?
Something about some dead guy about how crime is helpful.
I love dead white guys. That's I actually don't know if their crime was white. So I'm not pro-crime, not pro-criminal here. I'm pro-leniency only insofar as I believe it helps to lower our recidivism. Sometimes it finds that it does. For example, you're in prison for 20 years. What do you know? You know the inside of a jail cell. The environment in prison is very bad at encouraging people to get their life together when they get out. And that's why so many people, they get out of prison, they have 6 months on the street before they're back in. Sometimes it's because they want to go back in. Prison's all they know. They did a movie about that. Sorry.
Shawshank Redemption.
And it was a good movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, which only serves my point. But with regards to being lax on crime or whatever, there are a couple of things I think we should all agree to, okay? First of all, well, maybe we wouldn't. Drugs is bad. We need to stop locking people up for weed, just flat out. I think that drugs in general should be treated like a medical issue. Portugal did that. They decriminalized all drugs. So
there's conflicting data in Portugal, but fine.
It's pretty promising. So you take like heroin. Nobody wants to be on heroin, okay? If you're on heroin, in the fleeting moments you have in between your little sessions, you know something's up. So you treat that like a medical issue. Say, hey, we have government offices. You want to come by? That helps. Far fewer overdose deaths. And those people, they go ahead, they become socially productive. Bam. No crime. They contribute to the economy. It just works better than locking them up.
I wanted to say something you mentioned with UBI, you mentioned with the unemployment, the stimulus. First of all, we've actually had a really hard time hiring for specific work, like labor stuff, because nobody wants to work. And no joke, I've been having conversations like every other day, like, can we find some people? And it's like, we can't find anybody. We got signs up and down all throughout the area where it's like, come in, open interviews.
So many.
We had over 800 flights canceled due to staffing shortages, and now we're facing fuel shortages because of the trucker shortage. We're looking at this this unemployment stimulus thing where they're doing the $300 bonus, now they're doing the child tax credit, which won't be for everybody. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a correlation with massive job openings and people not taking these jobs.
I think it's phenomenal. Finally, the bargaining power isn't.
I think it's great. You're right. I'm so glad he's gonna take this argument. It's called bargaining power. No longer is it we have a job and you have to work. Now it's we now have to make sure that this is a good enough job for you. You now can say, I don't want to work here. That's an amazing thing.
In the hands of the workers, more so.
But it's broken. Like the flights are shutting down. Nobody wants the jobs, even when they do increase the salaries.
So it's true, the flights are an issue. But here's what they don't tell you in the news briefs. So stock buybacks, something that many companies now do because of their decriminalization. The airline companies have spent an anomalous amount of their profits each year on stock buybacks to enrich their CEOs and shareholders, rather than on hiring more pilots. It seems the issue here is this is a simple supply-demand issue. People need to raise their wages. You see these news stories from time to time where it's like, I raised my wage to $15 an hour, and people showed up. And it's like, yeah, that is how economics works.
We had John Schnatter, Papa John, on the show, and he told us a story about a pizzeria where they were paying $35 an hour to some of their pizza cooks or bakers, because that was a line. He kept trying to find people, nobody would do it. He kept raising wages. Finally, he settled on $35 an hour. That means pizzas are going to basically more than double because the wage they were paying before was like 15, and now they're over double what they were paying in labor. Their labor costs go up. They have no choice but to charge substantially more for pizza. In the short term, within a month or so, that might have an impact on those pizza makers. But the ripple effect is going to slam into everybody. All of a sudden, the contractor can't afford to take his family out for dinner. He can't afford to buy the food he wants, because the base level costs are going to start going up. Then the landlords aren't going to be able to hire the maintenance crews to fix the buildings. The landlords are on fixed pricing, which they can't change, which then results in a brick wall, a collapse.
I just want to say what we're having right now is an unprecedented economic shock. For a year, nobody worked, or very few people worked, and people got used to staying at home. And as the government should, it should have done more, but as the government should, it took care of them a little bit. You know, we have to ride this out. What are government funds for but riding us out through common crises? Better this than war. And now people are returning to work, and they're realizing work sucks. Work sucks everywhere. But in this country, compared to maybe some of our equally developed contemporaries, work really sucks. The work culture, our rate of overproductivity, the Americans more than any other developed country, by the way, we push our workers hard. And you have favorable employment numbers, but you don't have favorable underemployment numbers. There are a lot of people who have jobs, but they have like 2 to 3 part-time jobs. They don't get their schedule for the next month until like 2 weeks before the end of the current one. They're constantly worrying about whether or not they're going to make their shifts line up to get enough hours to get the money they need to pay down their student debt along with their rent and everything. It sucks, and it's untenable, and we are in an era of unprecedented record profits for CEOs. So yes, I think the solution to this, and it'll be a rough one, that's for sure, is we should normalize higher wages. Maybe the solution to $15 an hour was never a federal mandate. Maybe it was the inevitable economic necessity of incentivizing workers.
Hard to disagree with.
The thing is, this would have broken a long time ago. The only problem is that people didn't have the opportunity to break it because they were too busy being broken by their jobs. Jobs wouldn't be able to get work. Employers wouldn't have been able to get away with the treatment of workers if the workers had an ability to choose whether or not they could work. This is exactly what someone like Charlie Kirk would want. This is exactly like what they would want, which would be more options. If you can't listen, if these employers can't employ because the workers don't want to work, the market has spoken.
A lot of that. I will say that the lockdowns were way too harsh and intense. I will say there is a Fifth Amendment argument to be made, though, that if the government forces you to not work, then you should be able to get something in return. The government cannot take something from you constitutionally and not pay you for it. That's the eminent domain argument, right? Which was one of the best arguments for the stimulus package. I just think the lockdowns were far too severe and far too intense and really infringed on people's liberties and abilities to be able to take risks. I want to go a different direction. I just want to ask you a question. It's just more kind of about human nature. Mm-hmm. Do you think human beings are naturally good or naturally bad as human nature?
Tabula rasa. I really think we are.
Blank slate.
Mm-hmm. Maybe there's some inclination. We're hardwired to be social. I know that. We're also, at least to some extent, hardwired to be self-serving. The best society merges those two. The best interest for you is the best interest for everyone. The social contract from now until we die.
Locke's, Rousseau's, or Hobbes? Which social contract?
I guess I would just say the ubiquitous philosophical term more so than
because they all wrote on those terms, right? And they totally disagreed.
They all thought different things of humans. They all thought
Hobbes was at a very dark view, Rousseau very positive, mm-hmm. Locke was more neutral.
Socialists tend to think that human beings are fundamentally positive, but I reject that.
That's why I'm curious, because you see way too cynical for that.
Well, the implicit suggestion to that, to me, is that socialists think their system would only work if everyone was nice, and I don't believe that. I think that the best economic systems will work when everyone is an absolute POS, just a dirty, horrible human being, and you incentivize them. Well, but it should. Maybe humans are amazing, but the best systems should survive human greed.
I want to ask you a very simple and general question.
Uh-oh, those are the worst ones to answer.
It is. Do you think some people are better than other people?
Tim? That is what a question. Do you think so? Okay. Yo, what? Yeah, this question is weird. No, this is a little weird. Do you think some people are better than other people? This is his face. Oh, he sees every possible answer flash before his eyes, and he's like, oh fuck, oh shit.
Can I add a bit of nuance to that answer?
Answer however you want.
I think that some people have been developed to be more moral and of better character.
Oh no, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mean moral.
Just better, like they're taller.
That's it.
Oh,
however, but I think
what? Are some people better than others? Well, what do you mean? Do they have like a bigger shoe size? Okay, Tim. What an incredible way to ask a question like that. What a wild way to ask a question like that.
You know, your interpretation of the question is part of the answer.
By any metric, there will always be people who are better than others, always perhaps by some combination of environment and genetics. I just hope that we can all ride along beside each other.
I agree. I think, I mentioned this before the show. If you were to ask anybody on the left or the right, what did you want? It would be like for everyone to prosper, for people to be successful, to pull people out of poverty, things like that. I guess the issue is disagreeing on how we get there.
Well, I think I'm not sure if we want the same thing. I want more of a preservation and conservation of what we already have.
Do you want socialism?
Absolutely not.
Oh, no, slight ideological.
But come on.
I mean, we don't need to play the word games.
No, why do you want to preserve?
Well, I think that we have something beautiful, unique, and exceptional. And I take the more Hobbesian view of human nature, which is we're brutish and nasty and awful and cruel. And the fact we've been able to build something decent and civil is pretty remarkable.
But are you saying that we have a good system?
A great system.
And people thrive from the system?
Yeah, I think people flourish and thrive. I think that our right.
Yeah. Also, another really big thing that you see from conservatives, and it's actually really nice to see Charlie agree with this, is a lot of conservatives have a really big cruel world idea. So basically what it is to think that, yeah, like you said, the people by nature are cruel and nasty and brutish, and they have to be, they need to be brought to heel. Basically. So that's where a lot of his ideas of like really strong like societal oversight and like punishing people extremely hard. It comes from the idea that we are evil by nature, we are cruel by nature, and so to make something civil, we must have something to a very strong punishment system. That's where a lot of like throwing people in jail for just basically everything comes in. If we punish harder, if we go harder, then the world is going to be better because we are evil and we must bring light to it to cleanse it. Is that sort of like, yeah, it's that sort of like idea basically. And it's really weird, and it leads to a lot of like really bad outcomes for people, just assuming the worst out of every person. Ultimately, people, when they do things, don't go about the world like rubbing their hands together. They're a fucking cartoon villain. Like, man, it's time to make the world worse today. Like, that doesn't really happen necessarily. That's also one really big thing that comes with a lot of conservatives when they debate. If you've ever seen this, like conservative that just like straight up lies to you, that just lies to you. And it's not like a lie where they've been like told wrong about something. They know it's a lie. They understand it's a lie. They know it doesn't make sense, but they'll say it anyways because they think that everyone is cruel. So if everyone else is lying, then they'll just lie too, so they can get ahead. It's weird.
Rights-based system is naturally the best way to govern.
Do you want people to be stripped of their rights, imprisoned, brutalized, impoverished?
Of course not. No. And I mean, the sacrificing of rights is something that usually has to be earned negatively, like murdering somebody.
So this is what I mean, because I think I could ask you the same question. Do you want people to be brutalized, impoverished, imprisoned?
Of course not.
Taking their rights away?
But I would never want to grow complacent. You're both familiar with the Marxian theory of dialectic materialism.
You mean Hegel's theory?
Oh no, he had the dialectic, and we built on it, Or he built.
I'd love to get. I really want to get into the Marx thing because I'm super fascinated by it.
No, I just want to say, the theory. I mean, put simply, I guess, is that human society, the human project, it evolves as a product of antagonism, grinding antagonism between people. In Marxian view,
that's very Hegelian. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, he was a student of Hegel.
I know he was part of this. He was the young Hegelian.
Yeah,
he won the argument.
Well, no.
Once again, the coastal elites battling it out. Look at this. Look at this coastal elite dipshit. What the fuck is this? Hegel? Listen, this girl can choke on this Hegel. Fuck you. What the fuck?
I'm not. Well, you're not. I'm just saying, like, he would get mad at you if you said he was Hegelian influenced, but I don't think I would. Hegel was a smart guy. I just can't read his work because
the phenomenology of spirit is impossible to read.
Thank you. All right. I was worried you're going to make fun of me. I just want to say.
No, it's really hard. He made the very simple complex.
Yeah. He was. We agree on something. I just want to say. Sorry. I just want to. The project of humans moving forward. I think that antagonism fuels it, but in the best way. Not antagonism like war, but antagonism in the sense that we look at our ideas, our values, and we challenge them.
So I just want to say something we disagree on. I don't think humanity's a project.
Do you think we're headed towards something better than what we have today?
Probably not. Huh. I think that we're probably engaging in the second law of thermodynamics currently. That we're untangling. We're going to chaos, not order.
He actually thinks that we've peaked. Humanity has peaked, okay? And then they made the TikToks, and then they made the iPhone, and then they made hot chips, and that was all downhill from there, boys. Yeah, unironically, they think America fucking peaked in high school. Like, what is happening? Like, they think that America is that guy that you hang out with, and every single story that comes out of their mouth is, man, remember in high school? No, I don't remember in high school. We're 35, man. Like, it's just so sad. It's just so lame.
See, this to me, this is the thing, and I'm not trying to patronize. Conservatives have been shown to be more fearful on average, and I think if they thought that way, it would be very warranted.
But some fears are legitimate. You know,
certainly.
Winston Churchill's fears about the evil Germans were legitimate.
No, I'm not. No, fear is not always illegitimate, and there are elements of this. I think, though, that if society is to collapse, it would probably be from climate change more so than like the.
Oh, come on, you don't believe that?
No, for sure. You can. We'll see it, assuming COVID doesn't get you. We'll live to see some pretty severe. We see it right now.
You know, my problem is.
Oh,
you know, like I see.
Holy shit! Once again, I don't want to wish. This is not me wishing death on anyone, and this is not me feeling good about wishing death on anyone, nor the death of anyone. We don't wish death on people here. But can you fucking imagine if like someone related to Charlie Kirk like died of COVID? Like, and I'm not talking like related like his co-founder. For him, I don't know. I'm not sure if he had too many feelings about that. That probably opened up some more cash flow for him, you know? But I'm talking like, I don't like his stepmom. Not stepmom. Oh, geez. What am I thinking of? Fuck. Mother-in-law. If like his mother-in-law passed away or something, do you think that would change his mind? Yeah, sugar daddy. You think that would change his mind any? Unlike COVID, if someone like really close to him who passed away, it's like the sort of thing where conservatives go from being really anti-gay and then their daughter comes out as bi and then they go like super pro-gay. It's like that kind of thing where they only learn when it affects them personally, and they only learn when they get hurt. It's like the kid that only learns that the oven's hot until he burns his hand, that kind of thing. And I mean, I guess that's a way to learn, but I think that we should learn that before you burn your hand, you know?
See all the news, I see all the arguments about climate change, and I'm like, I understand them. And then you get Obama buying beachfront property, you get the celebrities flying airplanes, and I'm like, how am I supposed to trust any of these people?
Got to get Bernie. Guy rode the train to work. He didn't have to do that. Bernie's the man.
True revolutionary.
So, just to finish the point, I'm sorry, because I kept getting sidetracked.
But the idea of the human project is super interesting to me, because that's a collision point we're going to have. So.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think, I mean, people have always said this is the best it gets. You know, the Postmaster General back in, was it the Postmaster General or was it the Patent Office?
No, the Patent Office 1900, all the patents have been made.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's the best it's been, I'm not saying improvement is not possible.
Maybe we can make little improvements, but when I try to put myself in the shoes of men past, you know, I don't know, somebody in feudal China. And to them, what I live in today would have been incomprehensible to them in every imaginable sense, every conceivable way. But their arguments for the permanence of society then would have been better than mine today, because they would have lived in a stable feudal society for millennia. And today, I now am here using technology that would have been alien to humans 20 years ago.
I think about like the Cultural Revolution. I think about the revolution in Russia. And you mentioned the conservatives tend to be more fearful. And I think there's history that shows us things can go bad. You can have something that's good, not great, could probably be better.
What? Conservatives are typically very fearful people. Well, Mr. Vaush, did you know sometimes things go bad? I'm not sure if I really thought about that.
And then end up with an unchecked movement that results in millions dead.
For sure.
20 to 40 million, I think, in the Cultural Revolution. We had Lily Tong Williams on the other night, and she was telling us these stories. They're scary.
Always hindsight, right? Because people thought this about every major event in social progress in America's history as well. To break up the Confederacy, the Civil War, the fight to abolish slavery, sure. You know, suffrage for women, yes. The Civil Rights Act, yes. Gay marriage, yes. Every time we make a step forward, you're probably anti-gay marriage, right? Because are you?
I'm pro-traditional marriage.
Okay, sure, yeah. Right, anti-gay marriage.
Yeah, anti-gay marriage. Just trying to spin it. I'm pro-traditional. Yeah, you're anti-gay marriage. Thank you.
Pro-tradition. Yeah,
gotcha. Every time,
one man, one woman.
Every time we take a step forward, well, we agreed on the 3-parent household before.
I disagreed on polyamory. Actually,
50% more efficient than the previous method,
and that's not actually a study,
and 10 times more chaotic and way more perverse.
I'm not actually citing anything.
It was possibly not a linear growth pattern with parents in the house.
It's actually exponential. It just goes up forever.
Yeah, that's very.
Albert Einstein had 12 parents.
Yes. By the time you hit 12 parents, the children just a god. By the way,
it's like a warp.
Very ubermensch. But continue. Yeah.
Sorry. It always feels like everyone argues like this is the best it gets, and any future steps would be treacherous, but then we always make that next step. I don't know if America's going to be around forever. We're a young country, and countries far older than ours have fallen in the lifetime of America. So I can't look at what we have today, or the people that I live with, or the values that I believe in, and assign to them a feeling of permanence. But I can say this: I fear stagnation, and every country that has ever set itself upon stagnation has always died. Every time. Every country always seeks to better itself, and maybe that road to betterment leads to ruin, but the path of stagnation is always ruinous.
I agree. Our culture has stagnated severely. One thing I always bring up is like Christmas music written in the 50s. We still play it nonstop over and over again. Movies have become repetitive, redundant, reboots. It's devolved from where we had these interesting pieces of art to just regurgitated crap over and over again.
Can I just take some exception?
Is Vaush gonna throw in the capitalism?
With your argument. First of all, there is this kind of revisionist belief that somehow conservatives in the traditional sense, were against some of those social movements, which is just not true. Now, I'm not saying you'd be a Confederate, and I'm not even getting to the party switching thing, but there is a direct lineage between hyper-focusing on racial politics in the 1860s and the 1920s, and some of the people on the American left that are just completely obsessed with American, racial politics.
It's equality versus hierarchy, right?
But what do you mean by that?
Well, back then, the slave owners wouldn't have been like, I'm really obsessed with race. Well, equality. Now, it's obsession with race can be pernicious in many ways, but I think there's a pretty big difference between being obsessed with the idea of racial equality and being obsessed with
I think
racial
it's equally as pernicious, just they don't have the power to implement it. But we kind of already did that.
Do you think discussion. I'd do that?
Like you? No, I don't think you would. I mean, I don't know you well enough. You seem rather decent.
I try my best.
But like I wouldn't give power to Nicole Hannah-Jones.
I don't know who that is.
She founded the 1619 Project?
Oh, I just read the thing. I don't know.
We have a constitution to prevent us against people like that. What I'm saying, though, is that, for example, I'm not against social change. I mean, I'd love to abolish abortion, for example. I'd love to put fathers back in the home.
No doubt.
So conservatives are not necessarily always saying...
I'm still like shocked that Charlie Kirk unironically was like government mandated boyfriends is what we need to put fathers back in the home. I don't know what put fathers back in the home like means to people,
saying, no, we don't want to improve. We want to stagnate. We want the correct form of social change.
So let me ask this then. Let's get to the core of it then. What values are you looking to maximize? Not just
great question.
Not just like morality, because that could mean the same thing or different things to anyone. But if you were to look at a society and were asked to assess its worth, what metrics would you look towards?
It's ability to defend those that can't defend themselves.
Okay.
Charity, generosity, integrity, faith to your creator, the ability to pass down good and moral values to the next generation, one that believes in work and one that believes in the cause of the nation above the self.
All right.
I've got an idea.
I think that's a fairly collectivist point, that last one, though, wouldn't it be?
Well,
the nation above itself.
I mean, you could call it collectivist, but I wouldn't say the state. I'd say the idea of the nation, right? So there's two different things, and those are conflated sometimes by libertarian socialist types, which is a walking contradiction. I'd love to ask you about that.
Sure.
But it's kind of just...
Okay. Oh no, Charlie Kirk's gonna be like, you say you're libertarian, but libertarian no government, but you socialists, so socialist big government. How do, Mr. Vaush?
Being like a Christian atheist, right?
I might answer it when you're done, by the way, because
Yeah.
I think my follow-up might touch on that.
But the state is a creation of the people. The people are the country. That's why our Constitution, the preamble, says we the people, not we the federal government, right? So the people are the nation. And so that's why I differentiate between the two. Do you have a loyalty? Do you have a belief that you want to create something bigger than yourselves? I think that's a moral good.
To me, and I mean this without meaning to hyperbolize, but to me that's always strong, rather fascist. The myth of the common man, the people, the Volk, the idea that there is a state, and Germany was a state, of course, but Hitler didn't really appeal to the state. It was the concept of the fatherland that he really hit on, and the people were a beating heart of the fatherland. They were an instrumental organ. And to me, the problem with this is that when you get down to it, this thought process, this mentality, it drives men to do terrible, terrible things. Because interpersonally, all of the chemical effects of empathy kick in. I look at you, I see you. But you start bringing in concepts like the nation, the fatherland, and it becomes very easy to convince people to compel themselves towards courses that they would otherwise not.
So expected you to use a 1930s reference earlier, so congratulations.
No, well, I'm not calling you a fascist. I'm only saying
I know you did do the correct. I didn't mean to hyperbolize, but there's other nations today that have those values that we would never call fascist, like Japan. Japan is very...
Pog.
We can think about that.
Very strict immigration.
Well, I think Korea is actually a better example, to be honest.
I really don't like either of those countries for the reasons that I've described.
You don't like Korea?
I think they're both deeply conservative countries.
I agree with you.
Right.
They're wonderful.
And I think they do so in part because there's a degree of anti-individualism and the subservience they all expect of the common good. Now, it's funny. I feel like our roles are being reversed a little bit here.
Isn't that interesting?
The common good isn't something I appeal to. For me, the value I want to maximize...
No, I just appeal to the good.
The good, sure. The
Which
good,
is two different things.
Is freedom. That's what I care about most. And that's what libertarian socialism is about. There are many types of freedoms, positive and negative. If I might indulge very briefly, like, is a man thrown to a lawless desert without food, water, or clothing free? Really asking.
So, probably no.
I agree. He's free to die.
But that's an extreme example, not applicable in modern wealthy America.
No.
Well, all of the people... Yeah, good night. Yeah, take care. All of the people who suffer, all of the people, like, what is it? Just over 30,000 people a year die because they don't have access to medical care. Or the people who die of preventable diseases, but they can't afford the medical care, even if they had like access to it because they could go bankrupt. Listen, that sounds free to die to me. Immigrants, we do have to think about immigrants.
But any Western nation.
But it's a philosophical base.
It's also a Rousseauian argument. Man's born free, and he, spends the rest of his life in chains. It's just anti-commercial in nature.
Well, no, but it's a base philosophical argument because it's true. They're lawless. There's nothing preventing him from doing anything in that environment, but he has no ability to act on his desires.
Do you know what he does have? Consciousness.
Well, sure.
So that's a natural rights doctrine that I will defend.
Well, I mean, I like consciousness too. The only point that I'm getting at is when it comes to people's freedom and the ability for people to protect their freedom, this is what I care about. It's what Marx cared about. If you actually read what he wrote, and
I've read Das Kapital, I've read the Manifesto, and guess what? He was right about some things.
Then you know.
But not everything.
He didn't talk
really wrong
about equality. He didn't write on equality.
Wait a second. Wait, how's Charlie Kirk going to get on Mark Meadows for saying that he's read Marx, but then he's going to come out and say that he's read Das Kapital? What? I'm losing my fucking mind. Wait, is Charlie Kirk the hashtag wokeism? Is Charlie Kirk the real Trojan horse wokeism? Is this why Fuentes and his gang of cowboys hate him so much? He hasn't? Yeah, he's probably lying, but
Equality. He wrote on freedom because he believed that society was a very complex, interlocking network of systems that in some ways liberated men and in other ways enslaved them.
But do you know what he got wrong? He got wrong that sometimes people can be free for other devices that they are not able to regulate. They can be free not from alcoholism, drug addiction, some sort of any other sort of perverse addiction. The idea of freedom is a very libertarian.
But I agree with that, though.
No, I know you do.
The greatest society.
I say that. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just the greatest society is one where a man is born, and there are as few things as possible preventing him from doing whatever he wants for the rest of his life.
I totally disagree.
So long as, of course, he doesn't deprive others of the ability to do the same.
So I think that's a miserable society.
Freedom?
No, that's not freedom. That's like
you get to do what you want and not hurt people? That sounds miserable. That sounds miserable. How? I do want to see what he's going to say about this.
Licentiousness or degeneracy. That's chaos.
What is degeneracy?
Degeneracy.
I like men.
How about pedophilia?
Okay, well.
Remember that part, like not hurt people? Remember the you can't hurt people part of what he said? That's like that's like really, what the fuck? He's like, nothing's going on in here, man. In here, nothing, literally nothing's going on. It's blank. It's absolutely, the cavity inside of his brain is absolutely empty. That's incredible. I cannot imagine that. I like a man.
See, that's chaos.
What is degeneracy? I like men.
How about pedophilia?
Okay, well, obviously
you said whatever he wants. Is pedophilia freedom, Vaush?
As long as they don't infringe on the rights of others, I'm sure you could believe. I would believe.
Well, so there are limits on freedom, is what you're saying. It's not. He
literally just said that. He said the thing. It was like, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt people. And then he's like, wait, so you're telling me there are limitations? Yeah, we just said that.
It's Wild West campaign.
Yeah,
so where do you get those limits from?
Well, obviously you would probably have to have a pretty complex interlocking legal system to determine what we agree upon as like a reasonable limits we can place on people's behavior. We have that now to an extent.
No, I know. So like pedophilia bad.
That would be a bad thing.
Okay, kidnapping.
That would be a bad thing.
Rape.
That would be a bad thing.
Why do you think those things are bad?
I think they're bad because you're stripping other people of the ability to do that which they will. With all those examples, you're inflicting harm on a person.
How about dealing drugs?
I think that dealing drugs is a person's freedom, as is taking a person's.
What about dealing drugs to kids?
Dealing drugs to kids? I think I would disagree with that, probably because I think there's something exceptional about addictive substances and children. That being said, I think a lot of stuff would apply to children, specifically contract law. Kids can't sign contracts. So there's nothing wrong with contracts. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Eventually, you do agree that a conservative framework is necessary.
But I don't think that's...
What do you mean a conservative That's not a... No pedophilia and no drugs to kids is not a conservative framework. Children can't consent. That's not a conservative framework. What do you mean? What's happening?
It's a conservative framework because there are other things I care about that you would always disagree with, like collective ownership of the means of production.
Yeah, I totally disagree. I think private property and freedom are linked together.
Which would give workers the most freedom possible.
We've definitely gone along because it was just
it was
fantastic.
Right?
It was fantastic.
It feels like it's been 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, I know.
I know, right. And Ian, you've collected a bunch of
like 50 at least.
So right.
I'm gonna use the restroom. Is that okay?
All right, yeah, go do it to it.
It'll take like 100 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in what you think about. I think humans are inherently destructive by nature, and that if you took a human and put him in a room with a bunch of small animals and plants, over time, his hunger, purely because of hunger, ultimately, he would destroy and consume all of those animals and all of those plants. And
What the fuck? Are you just going to say that like then rocks are inherently destructive because when rock hit other rock and small rock break? What is this argument? They're going to starve to death so they eat things? Moonlord, like educated Moonlord is here. He has his Clark Kent glasses on, so just in case nobody realized who he was.
And then if you put another human in there, one of those would eventually destroy and consume the other human.
What? That's not necessary. No, that's not necessarily true. Wait, then how did any society get built? Oh my gosh, it's like they have no knowledge that we are a collective species. Like humans, our whole thing is about working together. The whole reason that we are where we are is because we work together, not just kill each other just for the memes. It's not how that works.
I do think that we are maybe inherently expansionist. I think that might be a defining trait of our species.
Life.
We conquered the world, and God willing, we survive. 1,000 years from now, we'll conquer the stars, and that's unique to us. Other animals don't do that. I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe everything would have been better.
They do this. Every animal does. The issue is that
as you can see, every animal is actually is actually imperialist. In the summertime, I noticed that there are ants in my room eating the cum from my socks. So they have imperialized my socks. They have imperialized my cum socks. And basically, I am once again a captive in my own land. It's pretty every animal is every animal is intrinsically just like a
spaceships?
No. Expansion.
Oh, yeah. But
I not build spaceships. That'd be cool.
Over time, they
expand the nest.
The limits of their abilities constrain them to a given area, a given population. But we clearly haven't been kept in that way.
Intelligence has separated us from that from the equilibrium. A lion chasing a gazelle. The gazelle runs faster. The lion has to run faster. The zebras and the stripes are confusing. Some get away, some don't. There's a natural adaptation process. We know what evolution is. But humans, we adapt instantly. We are like, hey, that bird's flying. I got an arrow.
And we have, and there are. I just want to say, we're talking about evolution.
Yeah, non-controversial topic.
No, well, in a non-controversial way. Believe it or not, you'll have to catch the behind-the-scenes release. I just want to say that I don't have much optimism for the human condition. I'm not like a huge optimist about this. We are, I think, very potentially destructive. I just think that we also experience, or we're better receptive to reward incentives than any other thing.
Ian's got a bunch of questions.
Yes.
So for everybody who's super chatted, we were having Ian, we mentioned in the beginning, go through and try and find really good questions. A lot of people are saying really awesome things. I want to read one that's not a question real quickly. It's from Adam Schrader, who said, so far this whole conversation reminds me of friendly bar discussions 10 years ago. I miss that world. Thank you, Vaush and Charlie, for being excellent. Thank you, Tim, for steel manning. You all have leader demeanors. I know a lot of people disagree with each other, especially in the chat. Along, but these are, I think it's a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Charlie.
Ian's got some questions.
Let me bring them to you.
And then afterwards, if we still have time permitting, I would like to do the member segment and then personally be more involved than I've been for the most part.
Sorry, we've been.
Well, no, that's kind of the point.
Back to arm wrestling.
There's a million things. I'm like, and I did interject. You guys know I did.
You just talk about the right to go through all of them.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
Okay, these are some pretty good ones. So you just said press.
We'll watch a little bit
there
of
we go.
this.
So Ian's pulled some super chats. M asks, please ask each guest if they agree or disagree with the statement. Abortion breaks the non-aggression principle and why.
Obviously, yeah. I think abortion is immoral, and we should do our best to eradicate it.
I don't really believe in the NAP. I understand people's discomfort with abortion. I think that unfortunately it's a legal necessity as a byproduct of some very compelling personhood arguments I've heard in the past, which I would have to read up on again before reciting.
Can I ask a question? When do you think life begins?
I don't know what life is.
So how about your life? You have life right now. When did your life begin?
I don't remember the first 6 months of my life. I genuinely don't
Looking
know.
at the development of a human life, when would you say that begins?
I know when human bodies develop. The genuine answer that I have is that I think that it's always going to be dictated somewhat by intuition. The intuitive answer from me is life begins at birth. That's my intuitive. If you asked me, like, that's what feels right, but I'm sympathetic to other perspectives.
What about when DNA is formed?
Well, that would be a conception, right? Or at least right after. Well, that's not what, obviously that's not the metric that I would look at.
How about heartbeat?
That's 6 weeks? No. Earlier.
As early as 6 weeks, could be as early as as late as 6 weeks, early as 25 days.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no. These are interesting metrics. I think that my understanding of consciousness is more of an emergent property of experience, more so than it is I would have to reread. It's been a while since I've read up on this.
You know what I love is you said, when do you think life begins? That was your question. I love how framing changes everything. Watch, ask me now.
Tim, when does life begin? I
think it was when proteins formed and started self-replicating in the primordial. Oh, you mean conception? You see, like, it's interesting how framing changes everything.
To me, it's more, I guess, for me, because like any cell in our body is alive. There is life and DNA in any bit of skin off my fingertip.
I wasn't meaning to poke at you or anything.
No, I know.
When does a life worthy of protection begin?
That's a difficult question. To me,
that's a better way to word it.
To me, that has to be a legal question because protection has to be arbitered by an entity, and it can't be. And for me, that would probably be at birth. I've heard people make convincing philosophical arguments that there are times after birth when you're not even a person, and I've heard people make convincing arguments for conception. But if you're talking about a legal entity, the birthing seems to be the line that's the easiest to distinguish. And there are other legal concerns as well. But this is an issue that I think I always support like a pro-choice argument. The philosophy behind it is something I'm a little more open to.
So is it more on the size of the being or the level of development of the being or the environment of the being or the degree of dependency? Which one do you think out of those things is the reason why you say birth? I'm just curious.
I think the degree of dependency is legally worthwhile, but for consciousness, I think it's more about it being an emergent property of experience.
So is it okay then if we just basically pull the plug on all the people that are kind of comatose and cucumbers on machines? They really don't have self-consciousness and they're very dependent.
Well, I mean, legally we do believe that because if you have...
Oh, it's very tricky in the courts.
It is, but it's not the same as...
Sure, it's like very tricky, but that's also a different question when it comes to abortion. The comatose person is not literally living inside of your body. They're on like a bed and they're taking resources, but that's like time and money. That's not your like blood and flesh, which we like to categorize as like two different things.
Murdering a person. If there's conservatorship over a person who's brain dead, there are instances where you will be allowed to pull the plug. You
can't do so without an arbiter though. You can't just call in and say, just pull the plug. That is murder.
You can just yank it, of course.
You have to have approval and process.
Yeah. But it does indicate that legally and morally there is ambiguity with regards to the relationship.
No, but it shows that there's an arbiter, though. That you have to go through a system of checks. I didn't mean to derail Tim.
I want to make sure we can get to as many questions as possible. That was great. Camilla Mamani says, WTF, a libertarian socialist is like a meat eater vegan.
I'm telling you, I swear all of them just think libertarians, no government, socialist, big government, what do? How do? It's literally like orc how do.
Libertarianism was actually...
Oh yeah, speaking of orcs, we should be playing D&D. We should be doing like our 5th session of D&D tomorrow, I think.
A left-leaning ideology. It was co-opted in the early 20th centuries by capitalists, but actually before that, libertarianism was exclusively in the purview of socialists, and I believe what they believed, that freedom is the greatest human good as long as it doesn't infringe upon others, and that the best way to achieve that freedom is through democracy. We have political democracy, flawed as it is. Economic democracy is something we should also strive for.
I'll tell you this, left libertarian quadrant is the hardest quadrant to be in. You have the only persuasion tactics. If you're left libertarian, which exists, you're basically saying, I like socialism. Now I have to convince people that it's the right thing and they'll agree with me. And people just won't.
I find left libertarians less threatening to the American way of life.
Oh, thank you.
Because you have a general distaste for authoritarianism.
Well, for what it's worth.
The right has money. They're like, well, you won't agree with me, but I can give you money. And they're like,
the left does too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just want to say, for what it's worth, there are some people who call themselves socialists who I actually think would agree probably more with you than with me. Like people who support China, for example. China's not socialist. It's a rampant capitalist state.
It's a cronyist state is really what it is.
Right. Well, I mean, whatever you want to call it, it's certainly not what I want, So there are people who defend that, and I can't help but think, like, okay, these are conservative, what would you call them, traditionalist social positions, and you defend, a strong state with a strong common will towards the betterment of the state and a free market. I don't know. Maybe that'll be, what would they call that? The Red Brown Alliance? No, I'm joking.
In a way.
So I've got a question for Charlie.
Sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar. Are you familiar with Alden's theory?
No.
You're not? Oh, okay, then.
Charlie saying that he's read up and educated on theory doesn't even know Alden. Yikes.
I guess I want to answer that question then. All right, and then the next question would be for both of you is, what is the single biggest political issue for each of you? And Charlie, if you want to answer first.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Political
I'm sorry, for 2022.
Oh, like, I could take that any way, I guess, right? What should Republicans run on, I guess? Or like, what is the biggest issue? Yeah, I mean, man, it's, I'd say the way we do elections in our country is definitely up there. Big tech is massive. Immigration is huge, but I think even something more fundamental that I think we almost achieved it tonight, which is that we're about to tear this country apart. And I think dialogue is something that is so beautiful and is so complex and almost spiritual in nature that if we don't have dialogue with people that you fundamentally disagree with, then there's really not a middle ground until you start ripping each other apart. And I'm really afraid of that.
What's your, what's the biggest issue of 2022?
Republicans want to like legalize ripping people apart. So, I mean, oof and yikes. Oof and yikes. You were mean to me, so you get no rights.
I agree that the political rift is
and yeah, Kat, we're still
almost
here.
Insurmountable seeming. The last time we had one this bad was pre-Civil War, and we didn't really fix it. We just had a civil war, and people were still mad after. So I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think we're going to have a civil war, by the way. There are some people. I think that at the end of the day, there's a big difference between the problems we're told to care about and the problems we're willing to fight about. And I'm not entirely sure if I know where those lines are, but I know there's a difference. With regards to what I'd care about, for me, it has to be climate change. I know a lot of people roll their eyes at this stuff, but like you can take a look at the polar ice caps. You can take a look at the weather disasters we've been having, increasing both in frequency and intensity. This isn't look, think of it this way, okay? I believe in American industry, all right? It's a little too late for us to be first comers, but if we really wanted to, we could subsidize the hell out of green energy. You think we're doing it now? Triple that, okay? Really lay the groundwork. In 20 years, we'll be selling the rest of the world the energy they'll need to survive.
You know what really breaks my heart is the video I made before the actual Green New Deal, talking about how we needed a Green New Deal, and then AOC's Green New Deal was like equity and college and healthcare, and then the botched FAQ, and I was like, I'm talking about why are we spending money on war when we could be researching green technologies and more efficient energy, thorium salt reactors, things like that, get fusion to ignite. Instead, we get this like...
She kept talking about things like healthcare and transportation and childcare. I just want my cow shit powered jetpack.
Like racial equity garbage bill.
I do like the Green New Deal, but I had this problem too with that teachers union board, the one that affirmed CRT, said they're going to...
The National Education Association.
Yeah, it was also a union, or maybe it was...
NEA,
yeah.
that's what it is.
Okay,
it's the largest teacher union in the country.
Because and first of all, what they said wasn't CRT, but I'll take that up with them.
They did use the words.
They did. And still, they got that wrong. So
if
I ever argue with
praxis.
them,
they mean what we've been talking, wokeism.
Yeah, man, it's because the theory is cool. You know, you wouldn't agree with it, but it's interesting.
I want to say something about this real
I
quick.
do not think it's cool. And I think
no, the theory is awesome. It's like the theory of communism. We should have a philosophy class where you learn about critical race theory. Teaching it in practice to children is a different idea.
So I actually, in response to my absolute failure in giving you the adequate response in our last conversation, did pull up Critical Race Theory by Kimberly Crenshaw and actually read what she was talking about. And I think the idea of the oppressed versus oppressor in race is a horrible thing when we're trying to get away from that. And I had a conversation with an actual racist recently, and the ideas to me are absolutely nonsensical to base things on race. Coming from an actual racist who was advocating for the same things in that book, I was like, so you're happy with this stuff? Like, well, no, because the wrong side's in charge. And then I had to explain to them, like, I do not see the world the way you do. And he says, well, that's the trouble with race mixing. And that's no, that's exactly. This is what I see when I talk to people who are in favor of critical race theory's core ideology and white nationalists. They tell me the same garbage in different ways.
Look, I have always been a firm supporter of the idea that the idea should be what's criticized, not like the...
Okay. I think we got basically what we needed from that. What do you guys think? I think we got what we needed from that. It seems like they're kind of starting to wind down. It seemed like they kind of started to wind down. I think it's like it is just about over now, and they're doing the member segment. All right. That was interesting. So what do you guys think? You need days to recover from that. So what do you think? The boy in our ring, all right, Vaush. How do you think he did compared to how I think he did pretty well. Me personally, I think he did pretty well. There are times when Tim Pool started to interject. When Tim Pool started to interject, he did his Tim Pool thing where Tim Pool pulls up just random shit and are like, well, I remember I was talking to one of my friends and they said actually that in the military, you can't even say nice things about America anymore. They banned saying nice things about America. You can't say a single nice thing about America anymore. What do you think about that, Vaush? Like, what? Not only is it untrue, it's like comically untrue. Like Tim Pool's input is just comically bad. So, and you can't fact check it on the spot because you have literally no clue what's happening. He just pulls it right out of his ass. And it's hard to deal with that. So, I mean, I guess he came out looking just like how anybody else looked, like I guess like around like how Destiny did. I think both Destiny and Vaush did a very good job with Tim Pool, like the first go round. They kind of stumped him, but most people, when you're pretty like educated up into the topics, you can stump them when it comes to like actual factual things, not weird. I had a friend, I read one thing, anecdotes, that Tim likes to throw out. And it seemed like Charlie Kirk did that too, where I think he conflated one of two flags. Okay. He either conflated the gay pride flag or the Confederate flag with banning, when he said, America started banning patriotic symbols. Okay, it's one of the two. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's one of them. Vaush was okay in the first segment. Then it came to CRT and I wanted to cry. Oh no. It's hard. I think he did well because he didn't get pinned down on like the typical things that people get pinned down on, like thinking this one person is like the end all be all in like CRT. I think he probably could have made some like more stronger arguments there, probably. Yeah, Charlie Kirk be like, I think people being free is like pretty good. What about pedophilia, Vaush? What about pedophilia, Vaush? I don't know, Charlie. What about Alden's number? You ever read about that? They talked about CRT through not random philosophy on progressivism and yeah, I wish it was like actual like on the ground and like disproving like a good amount of stuff, because a lot of the stuff conservatives lie about what's going on. Yeah, Kirk, he just it's incredible. Just nothing. There was nothing that came out of his mouth. Yeah, what do you think about this? Yeah, that was wild. I didn't think that was going to be his debate strategy. I read this one thing. What do you think about that, Vaush? What do you think about this, Vaush? And that's like his entire argument for everything. What do you think about this, Vaush? Kosh was the highlight. Chosh. Chosh. There you go. All right. How valuable do you think these debates are beyond someone asked me that. Someone asked me this during the debate, and I was going to keep it in my head, but I think I kind of forgot it. But someone asked me that if it was you, then thanks for asking again. If it wasn't you, then someone asked a question that was like just like your question. But I think these sorts of debates are valuable, but not in the value that I think lots of people are expecting them to be. So I don't think these debates are necessarily valuable in the sense that they're like learning tools, and we need to, instead of putting on Frozen for kids when the algebra teacher is out and the gym teacher has to now teach the class, even though that would be based and red-pilled. I think they're valuable in the sense that you get really good rhetorical strategies. You understand how the other side thinks, and it gives you a really big view into what they think, what they value, how to appeal to some of them, and what to disregard, and how to. And another really big thing is that there are some things that people believe that you can't really get through a lot of their videos. Like in the moment is how a lot of the times these arguments come through, and that rhetorical strategy and understanding how to get around the things that they say is vitally important to convincing people or getting people to understand like what you're talking about and getting them to start to be interested in these topics. That's like really important, I think, personally. So they are important in that way, because then it's kind of like the difference between like, it's the difference between like these debates. I think is the difference between like these debates and academics. That's like, you know, you may not, it may not be as holistic and it may not be as helpful, but in the real world, it's not, when these conversations are had amongst the general populace, which is the voting group, I think a lot of the times this is really important, because to convince your average person is to make a change in the world. You don't, if every single like philosopher and thinker believed in like socialism or whatever, but none of the working class did, we're not getting there, right? Those are the people that need to be convinced. How is his head so huge? Is his face normal sized? This is why we love your husband. He always has the best takes. You're not going to change Charlie Kirk's opinion? Well, it's not really about changing Charlie Kirk's opinion. It's not about changing their opinion. Like what we do here, I'm not necessarily here to change like conservatives' opinions a lot of the time. Now that can be a good byproduct, but that's not the main goal. The main goal of like what I do here, what I'd like to think that I do here, or me, or like what I do, or what Vaush does, or any other political commentators, or Demon Mama or Destiny or the Serfs or what I would like to think that we do is giving you like good arguments that you can take in the real world, not necessarily for like the hardcore conspiracy thinking crazy person conservative, but for your like on the fence, sympathetic to conservative values, but likes to kind of grill sort of person, or the person who's completely uninitiated to this. Or you can like defend yourself or your positions to people who are like more on the fence, and make these people look bad, which is also good. Do you still think that holds up when they're citing semi-complete political philosophy? I think that's more for them and not for the audience. You have having like an understanding of that philosophy, even though they're not like going through it in depth. I don't think your average person is going to understand that, and I don't think your average person is going to be talking about the value and the critiques of Hegel when they're talking about how we need to like not let like we need to allow gay people to marry at the family reunion, you know.